Chapter 76, The Invincible Little Red Riding Hood. Inspiration Identification in Progress. Inspiration Identification Success. Crack Name, Dragon Nest Land. Grade, D. Nature Form, Flower, Cup. Description, a volcanic island where villagers hold an annual ritual, hoping one day to receive the dragon's blessing and become one with the dragon. After countless prayers, 2 fire dragons took residence here. However, after consuming the offerings, they did not leave. If the fire dragons don't leave soon, the volcano will erupt, burning everything to ashes. The island residents have set down their journey flower boats, requesting your help to expel the fire dragons. Completion condition, expel the dragons. This is human territory. Special completion condition, floral appearance. The dragons are seen as symbols of nature. You need to make them leave without harming them. Crack mutation rate, 27%, high mutation rate. This crack is extremely dangerous, proceed with caution. Crack entry limit, only second tier and below transcendents may enter this crack. Crack personnel limit, no more than 100 people. Inspirational insight, you saw 2 fire dragons descending from the sky, unleashing hellish flames to vent their pain and rage upon the world. Inspirational insight, special at the peak of the volcano, you saw a man with severed arms. Just as he was about to kill the fire dragon, he trembled violently, mysterious black tentacles sprouting from his body, and ultimately died in the scorching flames. Chen Qi swiftly scanned the inspirational insights in front of him. Another large crack, an AD grade crack with a 27% mutation rate. In the New Day world, each increase in crack grade means an exponential rise in difficulty. The boss of this dragon nest land is a pair of fire dragons, a tough boss indeed. The twin fire dragons were a famous couple boss in Dragon Nest Land. Even a slight mistake could result in a combined assault by the dragon couple. Moreover, whenever a fire dragon killed a player, they would kiss in front of the player, killing both physically and emotionally. Therefore, the forums were flooded daily with rookie posts seeking strategies to defeat the twin fire dragons. When the fire dragon's health drops below 50%, they would flee Dragon Nest Land. When both dragons had left, the crack could be cleared. Chen Qi took out a cloth and polished his black blade until it shone. The twin fire dragons were extremely difficult. However, because of the high difficulty of the fire dragons, he had rich experience in clearing such levels. He knew many special ways to clear them. The floral appearance route, simply put, involved bypassing the conventional battle and making the dragons feel pleased, thus clearing the level directly and earning more rewards. Animal communication, bewitchment techniques, and others could achieve this special clearance condition. Besides that, there were also some underhanded methods to clear it. If you were a player with dragon's blood, you could even seduce the fire dragons and provoke an internal conflict between the dragon couple. And his chef skill could also play a significant role in this crack. Chen Qi turned his attention to the second inspirational insight. The hunter with tentacles, was it related to the deep-sea hunter's treasure? The information wasn't sufficient. Chen Qi packed his things and silently signaled Pei Lu, then went to the flower-laden boat on the shore. Aren't you here on Flower Island for business? How are you so adept at this? Pei Lu stared at him in bewilderment. Chen Qi blended smoothly into the crowd, following the people's steps to board a small boat bound for Dragon Nest Island. Over 50 people boarded the small boat to Dragon Nest Island. The Bloodblade pirate group had only sent one person, Little Red Riding Hood. The evil wolf Fenrir asked. Hey, Little Red Riding Hood, do you really not need your brothers with you? Little Red Riding Hood raised her head at a 45-degree angle and snorted coldly. No need, just 2 little lizards. I can expel the fire dragons on my own. Does everyone who follows the blade principle love to fight alone? Fenrir said helplessly. Really? Little Red Riding Hood, let me remind you, besides the fire dragons, there are other hunters. Sometimes, humans are scarier than monsters. Little Red Riding Hood's gaze lingered on Chen Qi for a moment, then swept over the others. She wasn't targeting anyone, to her, everyone present was trash. Smirking confidently, she said. Don't worry, I'm the strongest. Little Red Riding Hood adjusted her clothes and leapt onto the foremost boat. Chen Qi watched Little Red Riding Hood with interest. As the future Blade Witch, Little Red Riding Hood's strength far surpassed that of a typical second-order transcendent. Her primary trait was a single word, wild. For now, though, this crack didn't seem normal. Chen Qi chose a middle boat and stayed with other traveling hunters. As a sea breeze gradually picked up, the small boat carried them toward another world. Soon, from within the distant mist, the outline of a black volcano began to appear. On the boat, the hunters started a lively discussion. It's really fire dragons. To expel them, we must all give it our all. We need full cooperation in a team battle. Since it's a team battle, we need a leader. I propose Baron, the leader of the Red Crystal Hunter group. No objections, right? Yes, the Red Crystal Hunter Baron. He has cleared 1 C grade crack, 5 D grade cracks, and 30 E grade cracks. With such rich experience, he is the most suitable leader for us. Chen Qi listened quietly. Just as these people said, the fire dragon's health was alarming. Without special strategies, large-scale team battles were needed to expel the fire dragons. And that was just for facing a single fire dragon. Facing 2 fire dragons greatly increased the difficulty. Simultaneously facing 2 stout fire dragons, few could endure it. Under everyone's anticipation, Baron, the leader of the Red Crystal Hunter group, tapped his dagger with his index finger and coughed twice. Since everyone says so, let me, this old man, command this dragon expulsion operation. Chen Qi looked at him. He was an old man with red hair, wearing a hunter's outfit made of supernal deerskin, armed with a large sword specifically for taking down large creatures. Additionally, his exposed skin bore some bestial tattoos that enhanced physical strength. Whether in basic skills or weaponry, he was truly professional. Considering his age and experience, he was indeed the best candidate for this operation's commander. Though suitable, it was undeniable that this person had to have an agenda. Chen Qi grew cautious. Like the flower witch, his first impression of this old man wasn't good. Something about the old man's actions felt conspicuously deliberate. A sea breeze tinged with sulfur brushed across his cheek. Chen Qi looked up to see the volcanic island, covered in black stones, appear before them. Dragon Nest Island had arrived. As the mist gradually dispersed, the 53 of them jumped from the small boat onto the black land ahead. The exposed black rocks formed spectacular cliffs. The distant village had already been charred into coal by the fire dragons roasting. Some charred people exhaled black gas and wriggled continuously on the ground. Chen Qi stepped forward a few steps and looked toward the highest peak of the mountain, the volcanic summit. 2 resting fire dragons hovered in the sky like 2 spinning embers. The mountaintop was the dragon's nesting site and also where dragon breath grass grew. Better play it safe. Right now, I'm still too inexperienced to withstand the combined assault of 2 fire dragons. Chen Qi thought to himself. The safest way to defeat the fire dragons was to cooperate with others. At this moment, Baron slowly walked to the front of the crowd. We have traveled a long way to get here. I believe everyone present has come with dreams in their hearts. Our goal is to clear this crack. If we expel the dragons, everyone will at least get a skill card. I wonder if any of you would be interested in hearing a few words from me. Old man, spit it out. Little Red Riding Hood bit her lip and shouted fiercely. She could see that the Red Crystal Hunter group had prepared extremely well for this hunt. After saying his piece, Baron looked up at the fire dragons circling in the sky above. Everyone, at my age near death, wealth and power mean nothing to me. Compared to those, my reputation, posthumous status, wishes of old friends, and regrets of my long life are most important. This island embodies my regret. Then, he rolled up his sleeve, revealing a handful of red scars. This was a burn from a fire dragon. Chen Qi was slightly surprised. Baron had prepared even more thoroughly for this crack than he had expected. At this moment, within the crowd, someone widened their eyes in disbelief and asked. Old Hunter Baron, have you participated in this crack before? Red Crystal Hunter Baron sighed and fell into memories, saying. Yes, I came to this crack 10 years ago. And my old friend died in this crack 10 years ago. He fought the fire dragon alone to protect us. But because of that, I watched as his head was bitten off. This became a lifelong sorrow for me. I've come back now to avenge my friend. As he said this, Baron looked toward the highest point of the volcano, shedding a few tears full of regret. The crowd was shocked and delighted. Baron was already very powerful, and he was also a previous participant in this crack. If they could get the help of a prior crack participant, the probability of clearing the crack would greatly increase. A previous crack participant. Chen Qi pondered. Baron picked up some black dirt from the ground. Even after 10 years, the land here hasn't changed much. Though it may sound like an exaggeration, I know this crack better than everyone present, know the monsters here, and know everything here. With our strength, we can go straight to challenge the fire dragons. Thus, I have an idea for a fast crack clearance. I wonder if you'd be willing to join me in this. Baron laid out all his advantages and gave everyone an option. The traveling hunters were extremely excited, as if joining Baron's team would guarantee great rewards. Baron raised his head and looked resolutely at the highest point of the island. Everyone, let's expel the dragons together. Chapter 77, The Male and Female Twin Fire Dragons. Baron of the Red Crystal Hunter group stood there, quietly waiting for everyone's response. What he meant was that all 53 people here would follow him, abandoning their original goals to join him in facing the final boss, the fire dragon. Many hunters fell into hesitation. Many of them were only aiming for a small goal. The fire dragon in the land of dragon breath was incredibly powerful, far beyond what these amateur hunters could defeat. Facing the fire dragon was not something they had even considered. But now, Baron of the Red Crystal Hunter group was actually extending them an invitation. Chen Qi looked suspiciously towards Baron and the equipment carried by the Red Crystal Hunter group. The dragon-specialized giant cannon, fireproof tattoos, high melting point shields, potion number 13. Luxurious dragon-slaying equipment. There were more than just Dragon Nest Island in the D-grade cracks above the sea. What could make a person come back to a crack like this one at the first chance after 10 years? Other than revenge, what other reason could there be for someone to return? The hunter's treasure. Chen Qi immediately thought of this. Unlike the previous treasures, he now knew neither the location nor the difficulty of the treasure. Chen Qi had a strong intuition that the other party was also here for the hunter's treasure. And this old man Baron might know more than he did. What Baro was doing now appeared to be for revenge, but the real goal was probably something else. Baron, you wouldn't harm us, would you? After defeating the fire dragon, you wouldn't keep the materials to yourself. What are you saying? In the past few years, Brother Baron has distributed all the skill cards and occupation cards to us. Brother Baron is old, and to him, money isn't important. Being able to defeat the fire dragon and avenge his brothers is his only wish. Revenge, what does revenge have to do with us? How can we ensure that this guy won't attack us on the way? A small number of hunters voiced their opposition. Baron smiled. Everyone, I follow the principle of the scales and the god of the day, I will not break my promise or the iron rules in my heart. Plus, if we wanted to ambush, the Red Crystal Hunter group wouldn't need to gather you all together. Besides, we have only 8 people in the Red Crystal Hunter group, how could we strike against more than 40 of you? I swear to you, my invitation is heartfelt, I truly want to clear this crack. Also, here we have members of the Bloodblade pirate group, and I've heard that they maintain the order of the nearby seas. Under this lady's watch, I wouldn't be able to do anything to you. Little Red Riding Hood blinked, surprised to be mentioned by him. But Baron was right, the Bloodblade pirate group did indeed offer bodyguard services. Whether it was protecting islands or clients within a crack, it was all within their scope of services. Compared to other pirate groups, the Bloodblade pirate group placed more emphasis on their reputation. Thanks to their good reputation, they had the support of many islands. Little Red Riding Hood puffed up her chest, slightly annoyed as she looked at Baron. She had to admit, Baron had experience in clearing cracks. If they had his help, the journey through the crack would be much easier. Little Red Riding Hood formed a blood-red long blade in her hand, lifted her head, and said to everyone. 50,000 shell coins. If any beast dares to attack another during this crack expedition, I'll intervene. Don't worry, as long as you pay, I swear on the Bloodblade pirate group's name that I will protect you. Though Little Red Riding Hood wasn't even 1.6 meters tall, she exuded a domineering presence, like a biting cold wind. The crowd looked at each other. If they had the protection of the Bloodblade pirate group, Baron wouldn't dare to lay a finger on them. The 50,000 shell coins for a bodyguard weren't too expensive, so Chen Qi took 50,000 shell coins out of his backpack card. Although Little Red Riding Hood had a sharp tongue, she was known on the high seas for valuing affection and promises. Spending 50,000 shell coins to add extra assurance to the expedition wasn't a loss. Under Little Red Riding Hood's witness, all 53 people on the crack expedition paid her 50,000 shell coins each. Little Red Riding Hood accepted the money. Rest assured, I will protect you. Seeing this, Baron smiled. Well then, everyone, with the protection of the Bloodblade pirate group, we should be able to work together and face the fire dragon. Cooperation was indeed the best way to defeat the fire dragon. Baron took Little Red Riding Hood's place at the front. Follow me, everyone. Those charred creatures can only provide some insignificant spiritual points. And I know a route that can avoid these charred creatures and reach the volcano summit. With familiarity, Baron led the way along the volcano, setting off towards the summit. On the way, the members of the Red Crystal Hunter group also took out climbing equipment and took a shortcut. Chen Qi maintained a safe distance, following the group cautiously. Where it would have taken at least a day to reach the high part of the volcano, under Baron's guidance, they arrived at a platform below the summit in just 2 hours. Baron wiped the sweat from his face. All right, everyone, it's about time to rest for a bit. They were now on a large flat stretch of land. Going further up would lead to the dragon's nest. Huff, huff. At this moment, they could hear the heavy breathing of the dragon. Under Baron's command, everyone leaned against the rocks, gasping for air. We've finally arrived. I'm exhausted, and this place is too hot. And it was at this moment that Baron silently took out a red crystal from his backpack card, right in front of everyone. Chen Qi took out his water bottle, his gaze unavoidably falling on the red crystal. He had devised numerous strategies for Dragon Nest Island. Fire crystals, once shattered, would release a fire element aura strong enough to lure the fire dragons from the mountain peak. Wait a second. Baron intended to start an encounter right here on this platform. Chen Qi gripped his weapon, his eyes fixed on Baron. Baron turned his head, catching Chen Qi's gaze in an instant, and said, What a surprise, young man, you actually know what this is. At the same time, the other hunters of the Red Crystal Hunter group also turned their attention to Chen Qi. I've read about it in books, it's a fire crystal, right? Chen Qi replied, drinking down the water from his water bottle, trying to lower his presence as much as possible. But the astonishment that flickered across his face for a moment was still captured by the man known as Baron. To start an encounter without consent proved that Baron and his men wanted to plunge the situation into chaos. Baron, what are you doing? Crack! Accompanied by the sound of the crystal bursting. A searing aura instantly filled the platform before them. Baron, looking at the scorching flames in his hand, said, Don't worry, everyone, I have no ill intentions. The terrain at the peak is too narrow, and this place is the best platform to face the fire dragon. Everyone was bewildered for a moment, they had never expected Baron to take such a crazy action so suddenly. Baron wanted to forcibly drag them into a battle with the fire dragon. To think, just 2 hours ago, they had paid the Bloodblade pirate group for protection. However, they weren't given the chance to ponder. With the shattering of the crystal from atop the mountain, the sound of mighty winds came through, the flapping of the dragon's wings was like the descent of a storm. 2 fire dragons, from the mountain peak, came flying towards this place like 2 falling stars plummeting from the heavens. Little Red Riding Hood took out her long blade and lunged forward. Baron, what the hell are you doing? This damn Red Crystal Hunter group, starting a fight without their consent. Baron turned his head to look at Little Red Riding Hood, flashed a smile. Sorry, I thought you were all prepared, but now, indeed, is the best time. You're looking for death. Little Red Riding Hood's hands conjured a blood-colored long blade and charged at Baron. She had taken the money, and her intent was to slice in two any beast that threatened their mission into the crack, to utterly destroy it. And Baron quietly pulled out a revolver from under his clothes, aiming it at Little Red Riding Hood. Bang! Mere bullets. Little Red Riding Hood swung her blade, cutting the bullet in half. However, to her surprise, upon being cut, the bullet exploded into a red powder, which sprayed onto her. Little Red Riding Hood's face turned red, and she instantly felt that something was amiss. What is this powder? Who knows? Baron's expression was one of a mocking smile. He spread his hands, addressing everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, the fire dragons have arrived, now is the time for us hunters to confront the fire dragons. Chen Qi looked towards the 2 fire dragons slowly descending from the sky. As Baron had said, he had joined this venture into the crack 10 years ago. And for this journey into the crack, he had made 10 years' worth of preparations. All that was unfolding before him was within the grasp of the man known as the Giant Hand. The addition of the Bloodblade pirate group had changed nothing. What on earth is this powder? Little Red Riding Hood took out 3 bottles of universal antidote from her backpack card and drank them. Humans versus humans, humans versus dragons, the battle has already begun. Chen Qi watched the chaotic scene unravel before him and silently drew his black blade. Roar! The massive roar of the dragon surged towards them like a tsunami. The moment the fire dragon saw them, there was no room for retreat. At this moment, one of the main fighters, Little Red Riding Hood, was still drinking medicine. She didn't know what kind of powder she had been struck with, she could only mindlessly drink the antidote. That. Chen Qi walked to Little Red Riding Hood's side and reminded her. Little Red Riding Hood, the antidote is useless. That's not poison, it's an aphrodisiac, and a very rare one at that, specifically meant for dragons. However, a dragon couldn't possibly be interested in humans, but it will still fixate on you, meaning you will become the priority target. An aphrodisiac capable of inducing peculiar affections in large creatures is extremely precious in the golden flower bird kingdom with its diverse genders and species. Chen Qi remembered that such powder could only be obtained in C-grade cracks. Its rarity had already surpassed the regular rewards from Dragon Nest Island. Little Red Riding Hood paused for a moment, not expecting a first-order chef to be so well informed and even give her a warning. But what the hell was an aphrodisiac? This person didn't seem too bright. Chen Qi explained. To put it simply, you are the first one the dragon will hit. Ah! Bang! Dragon's descent. The male fire dragon plummeted from the sky like a bolt of red lightning from the heavens, slamming heavily onto Little Red Riding Hood. Immediately afterward, the male fire dragon violently whipped its tail, coiling around the slender Little Red Riding Hood, and hurled her against a distant wall with tremendous force. In an instant, Little Red Riding Hood raised her arms to block, but she was still smashed hundreds of meters away, her body spurting copious amounts of blood. Baron, upon seeing this, took the great sword from his back. All right, Little Red Riding Hood from the Bloodblade pirate group should be able to handle a male fire dragon. Then, he silently turned around, spread his arms, and proclaimed. Fire Dragon! We of the Red Crystal Hunter group, have returned. Everyone, now that there's no way back, join us in driving away the fire dragon. Fight! Hunt! Come on, dragon, let me feel your wrath. Let me see if you can stop us again. Baron laughed heartily. Something's not right. Chen Qi gazed towards the distant female fire dragon. This female fire dragon, covered in scars wrought by the storm, her scorching scales spewing flames, seemed to emanate boundless fury. This was the berserk state usually only seen in the second tier. Why had it entered berserk state as soon as they met? Interesting. Chen Qi smiled inwardly, leaped backward sharply, and quickly distanced himself from Baron. Baron pulled out his great sword, concentrating all his chi power into it. Chi power slash! Boom! In a flash, the female fire dragon lunged forward, ramming the charging Baron into the rocks. The onlookers felt the scorching breath of the spectacle before them. What was the speed of that fire dragon just now? The 2 strongest members from both teams were sent flying by the 2 dragons in an instant. Chen Qi surrounded himself with a protective layer of chi power while taking out the backpack card holding the deep-sea water elf. Roar! The 2 fire dragons, exhaling their breath, threatened to burn everything before them to ashes. At this moment, everyone's mind was struck with frenzied inspiration. The female fire dragon has entered a berserk state, it seeks to vent its suffering to the world, crack distortion rate increases by 5%. Chapter 78. When it's time to take action. As the female fire dragon touched down, the air around gradually became scorching hot. Chen Qi palms began to sweat. He had made at least 5 strategy plans for Dragon Nest Island. But it was his first time seeing a female fire dragon enter a frenzied state the moment they met. In its frenzied state, the female fire dragon would use powerful skills like the fire dragon's breath, dragon fall, and shredding bite more frequently. Normally, it was only just before leaving Dragon Nest Island that a fire dragon would enter a brief frenzy. A frenzied female fire dragon was at least twice as strong as when in its normal state. The female fire dragon inhaled the air around violently into its abdomen before lifting its head sharply, and fiery flames gushed out from its throat. Fire dragon's breath. This was the fire dragon's most formidable move, and it was an attack in its frenzied state. It required a strong tank to withstand this blow. Deep sea water elf, come out. Chen Qi picked up his backpack card. As a monster with the water attribute hidden by deep sea hunters, their bodies could completely resist the breath of a fire dragon. Deep sea water elf. Chen Qi looked towards the open backpack card, towards them. All of them had, eyes closed face, expressions, showing no reaction. They were still sleeping. Stop sleeping, it's time to wake up. Chen Qi forcefully removed the 7 deep sea water elves from the backpack card and, like tossing pokeballs, hurled them forward. Oh oh! The eyes of the deep sea water elves suddenly bulged and they gathered together to form a wall of water bubbles. The fire dragon's breath sprayed fiercely onto them. Wah wah wah! The bodies of the deep sea water elves trembled violently, screaming in agony. If this continued, they felt as if they were going to become boiling water elves. The scalding flames slowly dissipated. Well done! Chen Qi crouched down, avoiding the female fire dragon's breath of fire. After a round of the fire dragon's breath, the female fire dragon, due to its excessive body temperature, needed at least a minute to catch its breath. Wah wah wah! The 7 pitiful boiling water elves wanted to hug Chen Qi for comfort. Too hot! Chen Qi hugged them briefly, took out a water bottle, took a sip, and then looked around at the devastation. 13 people suffered severe injuries due to ineffective defenses. 5 hunters, with severe burns all over their bodies, lost the ability to fight and were in urgent need of medical attention. 3 cowardly hunters, overcome by fear, chose to leave the battlefield. The situation doesn't look good. Why enter a frenzy now? Could it have been the aphrodisiac powder from before? Chen Qi observed the female fire dragon in front of him and glanced behind him. Boom! 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 In the distance, Little Red Riding Hood, after getting up, gathered blood spears and started fighting the male fire dragon. The 2 of them had fought to a place out of sight. Little Red Riding Hood had no dragon blood, and the aphrodisiac powder only served to taunt, just as humans wouldn't be attracted to small animals dressed in cool, sexy clothes. There must be another reason. Chen Qi looked at the female fire dragon. Its eyes were shedding blood-red tears, and every scale seemed to be burdened with heaviness. Was it sick? Chen Qi thought subconsciously. In Dragon Nest Island, indeed there was a method involving healing dragons that led to successful completion. And at this moment, there was a noise from behind him on the rocky terrain. Baron, covered in blood, descended from the rocks, pulled out a potion from underneath his clothes, and fiercely plunged it into his vein. That really hurts, my bones almost shattered. At that moment, the people scared by the fire dragon stepped back and cursed. Baron had a cold gaze. He paid no mind to what others were saying and instead focused his attention on Chen Qi. Friend, what kind of pet is this? It can withstand a fire dragon's attack. Water elf. Chen Qi needed the water elf as if it was dough. Deep sea water elves were several times stronger than regular water elves, but they looked highly similar in appearance. Baron talked as he held his great sword and walked to the forefront of the team. Honestly, beast tamers in Shell Country are pitifully scarce. It's my first time seeing a water elf, and there are as many as 7 of them. Chen Qi became even more wary of Baron. There were surely steadier methods to defeat the fire dragon. Yet, Baron had dragged them all into the battle with the fire dragon, plunging them into difficulty. Friend, I simply want to achieve victory. Baron, sensing what others were thinking, spoke with a smile. Folks, we must take control of the frenzied female fire dragon before the female pirate of the Bloodblade pirate group dies, or else, we will be caught between 2 fire dragons. The people shook their heads. Although they were exceedingly dissatisfied with Baron's unilateral decision to start the battle, they could only swallow their grievances. Their only choice now was to join forces with Baron and confront the frenzied female fire dragon. Seizing the moment as the female fire dragon caught its breath, everyone took out their firearms and large melee weapons, and like a sudden downpour, crazily fired upon the female fire dragon. Rat-a-tat-a-ta. Blades, bullets, fists kept raining down on the scales of the female fire dragon. Chen Qi hid behind the female fire dragon, using a pistol to attack its back. At the cost of 10 hunters getting injured. Finally, under the firepower of 50 people, the female fire dragon finally felt the pain, flapped its wings, attempting to fly into the sky, to use the skill Fire Dragon Fall. Baron seized the opportunity and shouted at his team. This is it. Move. Lock it down. In that moment, another 7 people from the Red Crystal Hunter group pulled out thick, black chains. They threw the chains at the female fire dragon, wrapping around the dragon's legs, neck, wings. Then they forcefully smashed the heads of the chains into the ground, forcefully restraining the female fire dragon on the floor. Pretty professional. Chen Qi looked at the chains. The chains they used were a set of transcendent relics from a sea-level crack, capable of temporarily suppressing large creatures. At this moment, the entire Red Crystal Hunter group shouted in unison. A multitude of dark curses appeared on the chains. Boom! In an instant, the fire dragon was pressed down by an invisible force, its massive body sinking into the ground. Well prepared, aren't you? Chen Qi looked toward Baron. What followed surpassed their expectations. After successfully controlling the fire dragon, Baron took out a transcendent potion as thick as an arm from his backpack card. Then, like a seasoned bullfighter, he leapt onto the head of the female fire dragon, legs clamped around its head. Baron gritted his teeth, bent down, and with his burly hands, he forcefully pried open the female fire dragon's mouth. He intended to toss the green potion into the female fire dragon's mouth. However, at that moment, the fire dragon's sharp teeth snapped shut fiercely. Baron's right arm was severely wounded by the dragon's teeth, fresh blood splattered everywhere. Success! In the final moment, Baron pulled out his hand, managing to throw the potion into the female fire dragon's mouth. This potion, which they had spent a substantial amount of money to acquire, was specially designed. It was enough to force the fire dragon into a deep sleep. All that remained was to wait. However, his relief did not last a second. The female fire dragon broke free from the chains, and its scales trembled violently. Pa! The next second, the fire dragon spit out the green potion onto Baron's face. Baron wiped the green liquid from his face and stood there, dumbfounded. It failed. Chen Qi shook his head. It was indeed possible to force the female fire dragon to swallow the potion using such a violent method. But in the final moment, Baron made a mistake, he wanted to save his hand. As a result, he didn't deliver the potion down her throat but merely dropped it on her tongue. The significant failure left the entire Red Crystal Hunter group frozen in place, unsure of what to do next. The chains just used were transcendent relics, and they couldn't use them a second time. The female fire dragon shaked its head and flapped its wings, with hot flames once again bursting from its scales. Now, it was the fire dragon's turn. The fire dragon began to regulate its breathing. The moment it finished regulating, it would unleash another powerful breath of fire. Several hunters risked falling into the lava, jumping constantly down from the current platform. Out of the original team of 53, 20 had already fled the battlefield. Dragons after all are dragons, even those from AD level crack are not creatures ordinary hunters can easily defeat. The remaining hunters looked at the weapons in their hands. If they too fled, the whole hunter group would collapse instantly. Now, all they could do was trust that Baron could defeat the female fire dragon before them. The losses are heavy, at this rate, we'll all eventually become food for the fire dragon. Chen Qi surveyed the surroundings. Many had lost the will to fight. If things continued like this, even surviving would be in question. Fear, blame, anger, helplessness, and sadness began to spread like a tide. Baron's hair was disheveled as he searched through his backpack card. Chen Qi looked at Baron's backpack card. Though it failed, the green potion just now was a viable item. If there was a second green potion. As a chef, he had a method to deliver the potion into the fire dragon's mouth. Baron took out a second green potion from the backpack card and held it in his hand. He lifted his head and stared blankly at the female fire dragon, a feeling of helplessness pervading his body. Although there was one more potion, he had no way to administer it into the fire dragon's mouth again. If things continued this way, they would be wiped out sooner or later. Chen Qi walked over to Baron. Baron. Baron had already lost his initial domineering and arrogance, now looking as dejected as a beaten dog. What do you want? Chen Qi said. I have a method that can get the potion into the fire dragon's stomach. As he spoke, the entire hunter group fell into a brief silence. Under normal circumstances, nobody would believe the words of a first-order hunter. But now, they had no choice. Even though it was just the suggestion of a first-order hunter, it still caused quite a stir. What? Baron blinked and looked incredulously at Chen Qi beside him. What a joke! Under normal circumstances, within AD level crack, a first-order hunter had no right to speak. The female fire dragon was already in a frenzy, if they didn't act now. Once the fight with Little Red Riding Hood was over, they could very well face a doubles match. Chen Qi ignored the disdainful look. Of course, there's a condition. Baron, if you want my help to defeat the fire dragon, in return, you must tell us your real purpose for coming to this crack. What exactly happened to you here 10 years ago? Baron's eye twitched, and he froze. He was the most experienced hunter here. The other party was not only speaking out of turn but was also attempting to dig into his weaknesses. Chapter 79, The Ultimate Treasure, Flesh Implants. The sky was shrouded in a thick layer of grey, and scalding sparks landed on Chen Qi's face. Baron clenched his fists, a bitter smile on his lips. My true purpose, as I've said before, is for revenge. Chen Qi replied coldly. No one would believe such a poor lie. The other hunters cast curious glances their way. The Red Crystal Hunter group was on edge, watching Chen Qi with complex emotions. If it were before, they would never have paid attention to a chef stirring up trouble. They had no other means to pry open the mouth of the fire dragon. Baron's tight fist relaxed. I can tell you, but first you must tell us, do you have a way to deal with the fire dragon? Chen Qi gestured as if chopping vegetables. I am a chef, and my transcendent skill is cooking gourmet food. I can mix the potion into the food and get the female fire dragon to eat it. Chen Qi did not hide his plan. Preparing gourmet food and then getting the fire dragon to eat it was a common strategy. Everyone was taken aback. A chef, could it really be done? Would the enraged fire dragon really eat something made by humans? They found it somewhat unbelievable. Chen Qi added 2 more points. It can be done, this fire dragon does not know how many human offerings it has eaten. To get the fire dragon to eat human food, 3 conditions needed to be met. First, one must have excellent culinary skills. Second, a lot of chili must be added, as fire dragons like spicy food, the spicier the better. Third, one must collect special volcanic herbs grown at the mountaintop and place them on the meat, which greatly enhances the food's flavor. Chen Qi's eyes were cold, like that of a merciless interrogator. All right, Baron, it's time for my question, tell me why you came here. Baron's fingers trembled non-stop. As the leader of a hunter group, he was now being interrogated by a first-order transcendent. Could it really work? Baron looked at Chen Qi. If he could indeed deliver the potion into the fire dragon's mouth, he wouldn't just spill the secret of their mission, he'd even give Chen Qi their bank card pins. Baron's trembling fingers stopped, he took a deep breath and said, Deal, I will tell you my secret, and in return, you find a way to get the potion into the fire dragon's mouth. Baron began to tell his story. 10 years ago, my brother and I dug out a tattered box from this scorched earth. Inside the box lay a ragged hunter's clothes, a treasure. A box, the treasure of the deep-sea hunter. Chen Qi's eyes lit up. From Baron's description, it seemed that the treasure hadn't been placed next to the sea monster. Therefore, there was no difficulty raiding on the deep-sea hunter's treasure map. Chen Qi feigned curiosity and asked, whose treasure was it? Baron fell silent for a moment, as if he returned to that time 10 years ago. Who knows? At first, we all thought it was just rubbish. No one fought with my brother over that piece of clothes. In the end, it took us 3 days of climbing to reach this place and encounter the fire dragon. Just like today, we fought the fire dragon and then died. In the end, of our 20 people, only my brother and I remained. In the moment I awaited death, my brother, amid the heavy rain and wearing that hunter's clothes, fought the fire dragon. At that time, he was just a frail first-order transcendent, yet he managed to suppress the fire dragon briefly. At that moment, I knew my brother had found something valuable, something that could elevate us to the nobility. But unfortunately, in the last moment, he still succumbed to exhaustion and was beheaded by the fire dragon, and along with that piece of clothes, he was completely eaten. The severely injured fire dragon, due to its excessive wounds, left the island. And I became the only survivor of that previous crack. At this, Baron gripped his great sword. That is why I came here, not only for revenge but also to reclaim that piece of clothes. My goal is simply to take back a piece of clothes. The box, the clothes. Chen Qi thought for a moment. He hadn't lied, it was just as described in the treasure map of the deep-sea hunter. It was an unguarded treasure that had accidentally fallen into their hands 10 years ago. But due to the fire dragon, both the man and the clothes ended up in the fire dragon's mouth. From Baron's description, they had obtained the treasure of the deep-sea hunter quite easily. Which is why Baron, at first, even considered it to be just an ordinary piece of clothing. Really? Was the deep-sea hunter so casual with burying treasures? Chen Qi tapped his forehead, temporarily burying the question in his mind. He had an ominous premonition. Baron placed his hand on his chest. I swear upon the name of the god of the day, I have spoken not a single lie, chef, now it's your turn to perform. Give me the potion. Chen Qi took the green potion from the red crystal hunter group and observed it in his hands. It wasn't poison, but a transcendent hybrid potion designed for large creatures. With effects of inducing vomit and sedation, this potion could cause a human to eject their organs if ingested. The potion's value exceeded that of an epic skill card. Hang in there for 5 more minutes, I'll go get some ingredients. Chen Qi turned and headed towards the mountaintop. At that moment, the female fire dragon had recovered its vigor. Having just been fiercely attacked by the red crystal hunter group, it was looking to make them experience pain. The group once again found themselves in a fierce battle. It took Chen Qi 3 minutes, relying on his balance skill, to climb the rugged rock face and reach the dragon's nest at the top of the mountain, where he collected some flame grass. Flame grass was the fire dragon's favorite thing to eat, besides meat. This was also the most important item for a first-order chef to pass the fire dragon dungeon. Immediately after, Chen Qi returned to flat ground, took out a chopping board, quickly set up a grill, found an unused long sword, and skewered a large piece of meat. He took the meat out of his backpack card, then sprinkled oil on the meat, turned the grill, and roasted the meat. Roasting meat in a volcano was indeed a novel experience. Chen Qi had the deep-sea water elf wipe the sweat off his brow. Is it ready, chef? If you don't get it done soon, we're going to turn into fire dragon roasted meat. He was roasting meat fervently, and the others were fighting just as fiercely. Chen Qi glanced over at the battleground. The red crystal hunter group had become the main taunting unit by attacking the fire dragon. Now, apart from Baron, all the other members of the red crystal hunter group had basically lost their combat abilities. At present, only 10 hunters were still fighting with the fire dragon. Almost there. Chen Qi rolled up his sleeves, mixed a potion into the meat, then sprinkled on some seasonings. A deadly amount of devil's chili and salt, along with soul seasoning, masked the taste of the emetic itself. At the same time, he added the flame grass, and the whole roast meat instantly ignited. You have made flame grass roast meat, devil's chili, earning 100 spiritual points. Perfect cooking. Chen Qi took a sniff. He couldn't help but want to taste it himself. Next, it was a matter of seeing if the female fire dragon would take the bait. Chen Qi stood up, moved away from the grill, not quite certain whether the female fire dragon would actually eat the meat fused with potions. It was always worth a try. If all else failed, he would just run away with the deep-sea water elf. Crack! The female fire dragon abruptly sent a hunter flying. It wanted to vent its rage upon the world, to release its pain. Suddenly, it caught a whiff of a tempting aroma. But after a prolonged fierce battle, the angry creature was hungry. The female fire dragon sniffed and looked towards the devil's chili roast in the distance. Its massive eyes shifted. What was this? A delicacy fallen from the sky? The soul seasoning brought out the meat's fragrance, while the devil's chili and flame grass hit the sweet spot in the female fire dragon's taste. The ignorant female fire dragon flapped its wings and approached the grill. The onlookers held their breath, anxious. They swallowed hard, unsure if the plan would succeed. They were gambling again, staking their lives on the skills of a first-order chef. The female fire dragon wagged its tail. It held its proud head high, as if to say, how could the apex of the food chain be tempted by mere roast meat? Yet the enticing smell made it slowly lower its head. Just one bite. It opened its massive mouth and gobbled up half of the roast meat in one bite. It worked, the chili and salt successfully masked the taste of the potion. Chen Qi stood on higher ground, silently observing the scene. The female fire dragon, now indulging in the fine dining, actually showed a trace of pleasure on its pained face. The female fire dragon blinked. It had originally planned to save half for the male fire dragon. Was it really that delicious? Chen Qi smiled. There wasn't much meat left in his backpack card. To a fire dragon, it was just a mouthful. After finishing the meal, the female fire dragon happily bounced around twice. But in the next instant, it felt a nauseating wriggling sensation in its body, uncontrollable shaking, and it lurched forward noticeably. The female fire dragon suddenly spat a huge flame onto the ground. Then, it began retching non-stop. Under the effect of the transcendent potion, the massive body fell to the ground and slowly closed its eyes. The group trembled with excitement as they watched the scene unfold before them. They hadn't held out much hope initially. Food prepared by a first-order chef managed to satisfy a dragon's palate. The battered baron and a hunter from the Red Crystal Hunter group quickly moved forward. In their eyes were the contents of the female fire dragon's stomach. If that garment hadn't been digested, there was a certain chance it was still inside the female fire dragon. They squatted beside the female fire dragon, searching vigorously. From within the dragon's teeth gaps, there emerged a skeleton, clad in hunter's attire. Chen Qi didn't move forward but stepped back to observe from a distance. The skeleton gave him a bad feeling. Normally, such a skeleton shouldn't exist in a dragon's stomach acids. This item could be the source of the female fire dragon's frenzy. Baron and the other quickly pulled the skeleton out of the dragon's teeth gaps. The skeleton had no skull, its bony frame was covered in cracks, and it was dressed in a tattered hunter's garment. 10 years, 10 years. Baron gripped the gun at his waist. At that moment, the Red Crystal Hunter group examined the garment, and one of them asked, "Baron, are you sure this piece of clothing isn't some kind of erotic apparel? I think I've seen it at the Sexy Beast Apparel exhibition in the Golden Flower Bird Kingdom. This one's called Summer Holiday by the Sea, Enchanting Tentacle Siren Edition. Erotic apparel. What are you talking about?" Baron cursed. This clueless guy had the nerve to associate such a powerful transcendent artifact with the twisted creations of the Golden Flower Bird Kingdom during such a thrilling moment. However, in the next second, his pupil shrank. From the outside, it looked indeed like a ragged deep blue hunter's outfit. But that was merely the surface appearance. But within the cloak, he saw countless writhing black tentacles. A garment of tentacles. The tiny tentacles moved ceaselessly, entwining the white skeleton. A Red Crystal Hunter said, "Look, it really resembles that seductive siren tentacle style. I remember they said wearing this out is super comfortable. What kind of weird fashion show did you attend? Indeed, this clothing is strange." Baron also expressed his puzzlement. Chen Qi looked at the tattered hunter's clothes from afar. Moreover, why has a skeleton been able to exist inside the belly of a fire dragon for such a long time? From the tone of the other party, Baron truly didn't know the garment before them was a deep-sea hunter's treasure. Chen Qi took another step back. Immediately after, the hand of the Red Crystal Hunter group member trembled violently. He had discovered a tremendous secret and whispered, "Baron, this garment, do you feel it? Its appearance, it seems like it's the very clothes worn by the deep-sea hunter statue outside." Baron blocked the garment with his body. The style of this garment, although somewhat tattered and strange on the inside, closely resembled the legendary deep-sea hunter's clothes. He muttered to himself in a low voice. No wonder, so this is it, this is the deep-sea hunter's treasure." His long-standing questions finally were answered. At this moment, Baron's heart thumped wildly. He stood up, gripping his great sword. In the battle with the fire dragon, many were injured, many fled. The only ones who remained were some first-order transcendents, exhausted in both body and mind. Little Red Riding Hood was likely killed by the male fire dragon. That meant, as long as he killed the few weaklings present, he could enjoy all this by himself. 10 years, finally, we've come to this last moment. Baron picked up the great sword, turned his head, and said to the hunter beside him, "Let's get moving. Fighting between people, eh?" Chen Qi didn't rush to draw his sword. The surrounding air grew colder again. He had been conserving his strength and didn't approach the treasure immediately. Since the beginning, he had been curious, with the deep-sea hunter's character, would he really have left the treasure in a safe place? According to Baron's words, there were no other sea beasts around when they found this treasure. Additionally, this treasure had no difficulty notification. If one assumed that the deep-sea hunter wasn't the type to bury treasures carelessly, then, there was only one possibility he could think of. The treasure itself was a monster. The hunters all started to back away. Baron, holding his great sword, stepped forward. "Sorry everyone, I've been forced to this." Baron concentrated his chi power, preparing to kill everyone present. The only threat was the chef before him. Baron stared at Chen Qi, gripping the great sword. Slash! Chen Qi stepped back, and behind Baron, the white skeleton was slowly rising. A sharp slashing sound. Baron coughed out a mouthful of blood, his eyes looked upward, but what he saw was his blood-drenched upper torso. Thump! Thump! Chen Qi heart raced, tightly gripping the black blade. Behind the severed half-body, the headless skeleton dressed in hunter's clothes had already risen. Crack! Crack! Tentacles beneath the clothes, ceaselessly extended, entwining the nearly rotten white bones. What is this? The others backed away in turn. Whoosh! The white-boned hand entwined by tentacles picked up Baron's great sword that had fallen to the ground. Crack! Crack! The skeleton turned around, with great sword in hand, took a step in their direction. Every step made the hearts of those present seem to stop. Boom! Blue flames burned over the white bones. The people felt an intense cold penetrating their bones, continuously retreating backwards. At this moment, in their eyes, there was neither Baron of the Red Crystal Hunter group nor the fire-breathing dragon. In their frightened pupils, there was only a monstrous presence, a being that had died 100 years ago. The Deep Sea Hunter. Chapter 80, Headless Skeleton. Crack, crack. The headless skeleton's bones continuously developed new cracks, propelled by its tentacle-like garments, advancing towards them as if it were a battle-hardened hunter. Whether it was the way it walked, the gesture of holding the sword, or the action of swinging it, all reminded the people of the legendary deep-sea hunter. A cold sensation permeated the area. The people had already paid a heavy price in the fierce battle with the fire dragon. The posture of this skeleton was too horrifying, and many people, startled like birds at the sound of gunshots, ran recklessly down the mountain. Clang, clang, clang. Before he knew it, in the midst of continuous battles, only Chen Qi and some bodies blurred with blood and flesh remained in the area. This is not the deep-sea hunter, it's just clothing, just flesh implants. Chen Qi kept emphasizing in his mind as he drank a bottle of potent healing potion. You have acquired a brief enhancement of vitality and strength. Within the black market, there are 3 particularly famous types of equipment: mechanical armor, blood machinery armor, and flesh implants. Flesh implants often pertain to equipment made from transcendent monster materials. Unlike ordinary equipment, flesh implants preserve a large amount of extraordinary characteristics during their creation. This greatly enhances the extraordinary power of the equipment. As a consequence, the user's mind is severely affected by the extraordinary traits. Prolonged wearing can cause severe mental effects, even distortions. If mechanical armor greatly affects the body, then flesh implants severely affect the mind. Some flesh implants also possess a certain autonomous combat ability. And the equipment of the deep-sea hunter possesses this feature as well. The situation now must be due to the autonomous combat function of the flesh implants. Although this is not the deep-sea hunter, just a mindless piece of clothing, it is undoubtedly a formidable opponent. Can I win? Chen Qi shed 2 drops of cold sweat as he activated the dynamic vision of the hunter's eye. Stationary objects gradually became blurry, while fast-moving ones became clearer. The headless skeleton grasped the blood-stained greatsword in its hand, took a step forward, and swung a downward slash toward his direction. I can see it clearly. Chen Qi rotated around his left foot, dodging the attack. The opponent was fast, but the hunter's eye still captured the trajectory of the sword. After absorbing Yu Huo's shadow, he mastered many combat skills of the deep-sea hunter. The manner in which the skeleton wielded its sword was very similar to the knowledge in Yu Huo. The opponent's moves were all within his predictions. Moreover, he could barely keep up with its speed. Deep-sea water elf, water bomb. Chen Qi commanded. 7 trembling deep-sea water elves beside him made expressions as if they were heading to their death, fiercely charging toward the headless skeleton. Boom! Boom! The deep-sea water elves used water bomb, creating a massive explosion around it. Bang! With no room to dodge, under the impact of the explosion, the headless skeleton's body violently trembled, making crackling sounds like a jammed rusty gear. Extraordinarily effective. Chen Qi swallowed, his tense emotions slightly eased. Following the force of the explosion, a breaking sound came from the skeleton's arm, and its attack steps began to show noticeable sluggishness. The monster in front of him was not as strong as he had imagined. Like the automatic mode of mechanical armor, it was just a mindless existence, with attack methods that were simple and limited. As long as he grasped the pattern of the opponent, he could completely withstand the attacks in front of him. If it were a normal person wearing this equipment, it would be much more troublesome. But now, this decaying skeleton could no longer withstand the equipment. Chen Qi adjusted his breathing, poised for a counterattack, gathering qi power over the black blade. Tentacles fiercely entwined around the skeleton's wrist bones as it again launched a series of fierce greatsword slashes. Clang! 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 The heavy metallic clashing sounds echoed continuously in the air. He could predict the moves. Chen Qi burst into action, using his black blade to fend off the attacks relentlessly. Under the constant defense, more and more cracks appeared on the skeleton's arms, and its attacks grew weaker. And at that moment of defense, under the enhanced dynamic vision, Chen Qi spotted a dim deep blue rhombus gem in the center of the inside of the clothing. This could be the core of the attire. Attacking that gem might shut down the entwining garment's attack mode. Bounce back! After a loud metallic clang, Chen Qi found the opportunity and skillfully used his black blade to deflect the headless skeleton's greatsword. Bang! The greatsword fell to the ground. The bones of the headless skeleton's sword-holding hand fractured, and like a disassembled puppet, it almost toppled over, unstable. Great opportunity! Chen Qi didn't hesitate. He gripped his black blade with both hands and stepped forward to strike, targeting the blue gem inside the clothing. However, just as the headless skeleton was about to be slashed, 8 semi-transparent blue tentacles suddenly burst from the inside of the clothing. Immediately after, the tentacles erupted into blue flames, their posture resembling a blooming flame flower. The 8 burning semi-transparent tentacles struck fiercely like vicious punches, slamming into him. The attack came so suddenly that he could only use his chi power to block defensively with his bent arms. Boom! Chen Qi's body was violently knocked back, tracing a straight line. Ouch! The sound of bones cracking, along with a strong sensation of nausea and dizziness. I can't fall down. Chen Qi subconsciously clenched his teeth, then dropped his black blade, and pulled out the double guns on his waist. The 8 nearly 2-meter thick, semi-transparent tentacles lasted only a moment. It couldn't dodge the gunfire now. Chen Qi, enduring the intense pain and feeling dazed, aimed at the center of the skeleton and pulled the trigger. Bang! Bang! Under 2 piercing gunshots, the decaying skeleton gained 2 fresh bullet holes. It finally couldn't withstand any more and collapsed to the ground with a thud. Immediately after, Chen Qi staggered forward a step and aimed inside the clothing at the blue gem, firing 3 more shots. Finally, with those shots, the entwining garment ceased moving, and the whole skeleton fell backward, turning into a white powder. Huff, huff, huff. Chen Qi gasped for breath, not moving the gun from his position, like a well-trained officer. Only after 3 minutes, when he confirmed that the clothing no longer posed any significant threat, did he sit down with a thud, picked up his water bottle, and took a drink. Luckily, the headless skeleton's constitution couldn't withstand the power of the clothing. Otherwise, this battle could even have threatened his life. Huff, huff. Chen Qi panted heavily, feeling the power of the potion slowly seeping through his body. He had severe internal injuries, but fortunately, he had blocked with his chi power, avoiding fatal outcomes. Looks like it's going to cost a bit for medical treatment. Chen Qi looked dumbly around him. Scattered sparks, spent bullet casings, scorched ground, several charred corpses, and a sleeping female fire dragon. Temporarily safe. Chen Qi looked around. In this lively place, he was left alone. Others either ran or died. The fire dragon fell asleep, the entwining garment stopped. Chen Qi felt relieved, used his black blade to poke the blue gem at the heart of the entwining garment inside. The entwining garment continuously shrank, the whole garment seemingly attracted by a massive suction, withdrew into the blue gem and became a small model within the gem. So this is the normal form of this garment. Carefully, Chen Qi picked up the gem, and a special prompt appeared before him. Chapter 81. The Touch of Residual Fire. Chen Qi held the diamond-shaped blue gem in his hand, observing it as a hint of azure light flashed in his eyes. Residual Fire Touch. Nature Form, Blade. Equipment Requirements, Constitution 25, Minimum Required. Description, a piece of transcendent equipment made from the blade phase of disaster. Entwining Residual Fire. When wearing this equipment, black tendrils will emanate from the inner side of your clothes, entwining your limbs. These tendrils will overdraw your body's potential, greatly enhancing your agility, strength, and burst speed. They have a certain degree of automatic counterattack functionality, intercepting attacks from all directions. Simultaneously, in this state, your resistance to liquid-based and psychic attacks from deep-sea creatures will be significantly heightened. Residual Fire Bloom. For a short period, 8 semi-translucent tendrils, burning with blue flames, will extend from the inner side of your clothes, acting as extensions of your limbs. Note: using this equipment will rapidly deplete your stamina and spirit, and you will experience intense feelings of rage. Residual fire touch. Chen Qi looked at the description of the equipment. A piece of transcendent equipment that greatly consumed spirit. Once equipped, it would be like wearing a garment made of black tendrils. Of course, from the surface, it looked like an ordinary piece of ragged clothing. Chen Qi stared at the azure gem, imagining a scene in his mind. When he was fighting hand-to-hand with someone, a small black tendril would suddenly emerge from beneath his clothes, launching a sneaky attack on his opponent. The attributes this equipment enhanced were rare, and the enhancement was considerable. Even a worn-out skeleton could become so powerful, so once he equipped it, he should be able to take off, right? Chen Qi chuckled. Well, I didn't expect the deep-sea hunter to be such a person after all. In this country that believed in the hammer phase, most people still preferred armor-type equipment. In the Witch Sea, such tentacled, spirit-affecting transcendent equipment was usually only used by those who believed in deep-sea creations. In people's perceptions, the deep-sea hunter was a hunter who tore through the ocean with a powerful physique, not someone who would use such weird equipment. But now, it seemed that the deep-sea hunter might have worn this equipment every day before his death, only it was not noticeable from the surface. Chen Qi opened the backpack card and carefully placed the residual fire touch inside after confirming there were no issues. With his current sore body, he was in no condition to wear this garment. It's time to leave. Chen Qi dusted off the dirt on the ground, stood up, and glanced at the sleeping female fire dragon. The female fire dragon's health had already fallen below half, and once it awakened, it would leave this island. If he could kill the female fire dragon, the rewards would increase further. This creature's health was too high, making it difficult to muster any will to attack. Obtaining the residual fire touch was already quite a good harvest, there was no need to forcefully pursue the rewards for clearing the crack. The risk was too high. It's okay now, it's okay, let's go. Chen Qi comforted the panicked deep-sea water elf. These water elves possessed higher intelligence and were more easily frightened. Just now, for them to charge forward resolutely required considerable courage. Chen Qi headed towards the dragon's nest at the mountain peak, searching for dragon's breath grass, and yanked them out. There were as many as 10 dragon's breath grass. With such a quantity, the flower witch should be quite pleased. Chen Qi collected the dragon's breath grass and began walking down the mountain along the original path. Thanks to his balancing skill, the rugged mountain roads were still manageable. Suddenly, Chen Qi heard the sound of wings flapping in the sky. He suddenly remembered something. Where was Little Red Riding Hood? From the start of the battle, the arrogant Little Red Riding Hood had become the taunt unit. During the battle, he and the fire dragon, 2 strong adversaries, had fought to the foot of the mountain. How did it go? Did she win? Chen Qi wondered privately. Even though the male fire dragon was much weaker than the female fire dragon, facing a male fire dragon alone was still an exceptionally difficult task. Chen Qi looked up and saw a severely injured fire dragon struggling to fly towards the mountain peak. Not bad, Little Red Riding Hood, pretty capable fighter. Chen Qi felt pleased. This was good news. When the injured male fire dragon returned to the peak and saw its sleeping mate, it would probably give the female fire dragon a couple of slaps. If that happened, the 2 injured fire dragons would leave this place, meeting the cracks clearing condition. At this moment, Chen Qi heard heavy breathing. He took a few steps towards the sound. Amidst a pile of broken rocks, Little Red Riding Hood lay covered in blood, her golden hair under her hat in disarray, and her chest rising and falling. She was already strong enough, fully living up to her previous arrogant display. But for a second-order transcendent, fighting a fire dragon alone came with a heavy price. Chen Qi pulled up his hunter's hood, ensuring his face remained unseen, and glanced carefully. Little Red Riding Hood, catching her breath in her last moments, muttered weakly to herself. I will come back, to marry you, my beloved wife. Chen Qi raised an eyebrow. Wife? It seemed he had overheard some earth-shattering secret. Chen Qi quickly ran his brain through some thoughts. In the Witch Sea, a meticulous and polite gentleman should not easily assume someone's gender, species, or orientation. It wasn't something rare. No need to overreact. Chen Qi thought to himself. The opponent's injured body was recovering at a very slow rate, not needing his help. Besides, she probably still had some trump cards left unused. Unlike other players, he did not have a masochistic tendency and did not want to engage with the hot-tempered Little Red Riding Hood any further for the moment. The Bloodblade pirate group's troubles were too many to handle, not something he could deal with now. He still had to find the Flower Witch. Chen Qi tossed a healing potion to her and then walked down the mountain. As he left, Little Red Riding Hood's blood-stained eyes showed a hint of fear. The fight, is it over? She seemed surprised that someone could come down from above. She wanted to call out to him, but the burning sensation in her throat prevented her from making any sound. After 4 hours, Chen Qi finally descended the mountain and returned to the seaside. The number of boats had decreased by 10, leaving only 10 hunters who had exited the crack. Nice scenery. The exhausted Chen Qi sat by the seaside, holding the deep sea water elf, feeling the cool sea water wash over his feet and quietly enjoying the sea breeze, taking a break. The deep sea water elf nestled against Chen Qi, giving their tired master a massage. After a while, he slowly looked up. Finally, the 2 fire dragons circled in the sky like stars, disappearing into the distant horizon. Finally, they're gone. Chen Qi gently squeezed the deep sea water elf in his arms. The 2 fire dragons were driven away, crack completed. Crack instance settlement in progress. Chapter 82, Settlement. Crack settlement in progress. Distortion degree of the crack reduced by 20%, current distortion degree 7%. Battle to the last chapter, both fire dragons were significantly injured and fled in panic, reward plus 50%. Dragon friend, you are very friendly with fire dragons, reward plus 20%. Master chef, you captivated the taste buds of the female fire dragon with your exquisite culinary skills, reward plus 70%. Settlement complete, comprehensive evaluation A. Received a Dragon Nest Island exclusive skill card box. Chen Qi looked at his evaluation. In this crack, he did not participate in the battle to repel the male fire dragon. Therefore, he did not achieve a perfect clearance. However, being able to obtain an A rating in a large-scale D-level crack with first-order strength was quite impressive. He was already very skilled. Would you like to draw a skill card? Draw. Chen Qi did not hesitate, as they were all dragon-related skill cards anyway. A card condensed at his fingertips. Dragon Charm. Nature form, floral. Learning conditions, possess a certain degree of dragon bloodline or similar dragon bloodline. Effect, you can cultivate your own dragon aura, which can attract dragon-type creatures' affection, allowing you to blend into dragon groups. When practiced to the extreme, you can even seduce a dragon. Description, wow, the roar of the evil dragon. A cute little fire dragon card appeared in his hand. Dragon Charm? What is this? Do I look like someone who can seduce dragons? Chen Qi frowned as he looked at the playful and affectionate little fire dragon on the card. As expected, not every draw can yield a useful card. The higher the level of the skill card, the more usage conditions it had. He did not meet the conditions for this card's use. The requirements for this skill card were quite stringent. To obtain a dragon bloodline, one needed either a related high-order occupation card or to undergo a special genetic modification surgery. Obviously, he could not meet either of these conditions. Chen Qi stored the card and put it in his backpack card. His attributes were quite good now, mastering Qi power and body forging skill. To enhance his strength, mastering more powerful Qi skills was most crucial. Therefore, the best option was to go to the Moonstone Cities Guild and exchange the Floral Nature skill card for a Qi-related skill card. A Dragon Nest Island card exchanged for an epic Qi card was not a problem. It's about time to leave. Chen Qi held the deep sea water elf and jumped onto the small boat ahead. The distortion degree dropped to 7%, and the crack would close completely 24 hours after this crack ended. It was still not daylight. Chen Qi lit a kerosene lamp on the boat. The dimly lit boat slowly glided across the pitch-black water, heading towards the real world. Chen Qi looked up at the dim moon in the sky and then at the waves under the boat. He suddenly had a bold idea. What would happen if he just jumped into the sea like this? In this world, cracks, skill cards, transcendent occupations, and inspiration were as commonplace as the sun on Earth. Many things that seemed magical to him as an earthling were very normal in their eyes. As long as the crack did not involve the void. There was always a way in and an exit path within a certain time after clearance. This was a common understanding. But in reality, no one stopped him from staying in the crack after clearing it. He could completely stay in the crack to eat, sleep, battle water elves, and watch the sunrise and moon every day. A great place to hide. Chen Qi recalled that the player forum seemed to mention related things. If one stayed in the crack for too long, it might even lead to the deletion of their character. Anyway, it wasn't a good thing. Chen Qi suppressed this bold idea and tightly held the deep-sea water elf who tried to stick to the sea water. These little fellows losing themselves in the crack would be troublesome. After a while, the color and shape of the moon in the sky gradually changed. The gentle sunlight of the day shone on his face. A prompt appeared in his mind. You have exited the crack. Back to the real world. Chen Qi looked into the distance and began rowing with a rough paddle made from a black knife. As expected, the Bloodblade pirate group should still be guarding the crack's entrance. Chen Qi did not have a bad impression of the Bloodblade pirate group. Overall, the Bloodblade pirate group was quite an orderly pirate group, providing important order beyond the coast. As long as they did not get involved with the Black Whale pirate group and the Navy, they could be seen as a sheriff-type presence. But anyway, he was one of the few survivors from Dragon Nest Island this time. Although nobody saw him defeat the headless skeleton and obtain the residual fire touch at the end. If he just went ashore like this, he'd be surrounded by people asking about the crack in Dragon Nest Island. After all, he was now being hunted by the Black Whale group. It's best to keep a low profile to avoid trouble. After rowing a certain distance, Chen Qi held the water elf tightly and jumped into the sea. The deep-sea water elf was a natural flotation device. By holding the deep-sea water elf, he swam as agilely as a fish in the sea. Chen Qi felt he could write a book in the future, called 100 Uses of the Water Elf. After swimming for a while, he returned to the dock of Flower Island. Now, everyone else was guarding the crack entrance, so the dock was empty. An exhausted Chen Qi placed his hand on the small houseboat and climbed aboard with effort. Shhh. Chen Qi looked up. Someone was on the boat. In the faint moonlight, Pei Lu was sitting on the roof of the boathouse, reading a history book. The pages of the book gently turned in the breeze, creating slight rustling sounds that intertwined with the tranquil sea. Like a literature girl, a history aficionado. Until she noticed Chen Qi in an instant. The moment Pei Lu saw Chen Qi, her eyebrows raised, her mouth slightly open in an utterly shocked expression, her limbs moving frantically. I'm not a water ghost. Chen Qi explained as he walked into the boathouse, taking out a towel to wipe his soaking wet hair. What happened? Can you tell me? Pei Lu curiously asked, lowering her head. She always had well-informed intelligence. The crack in Dragon Nest Island was highly challenging, and many participants had already given up. How did he manage to escape? After drying his body, Chen Qi walked out of the boathouse, basking in the sunlight for a while. I found a good opportunity to leave Dragon Nest Island. Pei Lu looked at Chen Qi. Her intuition told her that Chen Qi must have done something significant he didn't want to tell her. Darn Riddler. Pei Lu's curiosity was piqued. She rested her chin in her palm, mumbling. You can tell me. Although I'm a journalist, I don't write everything in the newspaper, nor do I spread my friends' affairs everywhere. Friends? Hey. Chen Qi looked at Pei Lu doubtfully. He didn't believe it. If Pei Lu knew this involved a deep-sea hunter, she would definitely write the article immediately. Then by the next day, everyone in the city would know. Chen Qi took off the hunter's clothing that concealed his appearance, hanging it dry on the boathouse. Indeed, some things happened. That little Red Riding Hood from the Bloodblade pirate group successfully defeated a fire dragon. The crack miraculously cleared. As long as a crack was cleared, there would be skill card rewards. And skill cards were scarce commodities all around. Pei Lu showed a surprised expression and genuinely smiled. Another clearance. Your crack clearance frequency and speed are incredibly fast. I think you could totally apply for a hunter license. Even she dared not easily enter a D-level crack. Pei Lu could see through it. This guy wasn't a real chef. He was someone who wanted to dive into every crack he saw. Pei Lu teased. What chef goes into cracks every day? Culinary skills are important, but so are fresh ingredients. I initially wanted to get some dragon meat from Dragon Nest Island, but unfortunately failed. Dragon meat. Pei Lu swallowed or was very interested in it. But clearly, it wasn't an easily obtained ingredient. Chen Qi smiled. Next time he had the chance, he would try to get some dragon meat. It was extremely nourishing. The hunter license, I'll take the exam when I have time. The hunter license was issued by various transcendent organizations of states. In many places, a hunter license was not only a symbol of identity but also conferred various privileges, like priority entry to many cracks and information on crack intelligence collected by weather bureaus. For mercenary work, holding a license also earned higher pay. After sun-drying the moisture from his body, Chen Qi looked at the shimmering sea in the distance and asked, "Pei Lu, do you have any information about the Flower Witch?" Chapter 83. The Witch's Invitation. Chen Qi asked curiously. At this point, Perry's expression turned listless, like a rain-drenched kitten. No. Perry pointed to the bruise on her face. It was evident that she had been beaten while searching for the Flower Witch. Indeed, the Flower Witch isn't that easy to find. Chen Qi shook his head. He still had to find the Flower Witch to complete their deal. According to the Flower Witch, once he obtained the Dragon's Breath grass, she had her ways to find him. Logically speaking, even if he ran to the ends of the earth, a witch would have no trouble finding him. But with the Flower Witch, there was always a feeling of unease. It's better to wait here for a while. But he might need to wait for Perry to leave. Chen Qi lay outside the boathouse. After being beaten, Perry became unexpectedly quiet. After finishing her book, she fiddled with her radio again. Eventually, she received a message from the Shell Country Meteorological Bureau and, due to work obligations, left Flower Island on her white dove. And Chen Qi just lay there on the ship, basking in the sun, and feeling the sea breeze. Sometimes, lying in a spot bathed in sunlight, with no worries, no goals. Comfortably soaking up the sun all day, until he felt like getting up. Days like this weren't bad at all. The small houseboat swayed gently. And so, Chen Qi slowly closed his eyes and drifted into a dream. In his dream, he didn't escape from the Black Whale group. Instead, he chose to follow the Sauce Hark, joining Little Raven and the Black-Eyed Captain in their daily fights, striving to become a great pirate. He was ruthless, and with his deep sea affinity, he progressed from an ordinary sailor to bosun, then to first mate, and finally to captain, owning his own ship, famous across the seas. In the end, his talents caught the attention of his superiors. Then, he was tied up and taken to a small, dark room where a group of kind-looking doctors curiously stripped off his clothes and began dissecting him, injecting him with strange black blood medicine. His body began to feel odd. His head was hot, his body ached. Chen Qi slowly opened his eyes, looking up at the sky. The flames of daylight gradually diminished, and the sky donned a layer of red twilight. He had slept for half a day. "Are you awake?" Next to him, a gentle female voice spoke. There really was a doctor by his side. The scent of flowers. Lying on the deck, Chen Qi turned his head. The Flower Witch was squatting next to him, looking down at him. "Flower Witch, when did you arrive?" Chen Qi sat up groggily. The Flower Witch replied softly. 4 hours ago. You didn't wake me up 4 hours ago." Chen Qi hadn't expected that he had slept so vulnerably on the open sea for so long. It was a good thing the Flower Witch was the one who came. If it had been someone else or some non-human creature that had boarded his ship, that would have been troublesome. The Flower Witch said softly. "You seem to be sleeping deeply, and since you were gravely injured, I didn't want to disturb your rest." From the time Chen Qi entered the crack, to the time he left it, not even a day had passed. Therefore, the Flower Witch thought that Chen Qi must have suffered some major blow in the crack and then fled, that's why he slept for so long. She thought it over and decided to let him sleep a bit longer. A lot of worries can be alleviated with a good sleep. Chen Qi shook his groggy head. The Flower Witch had the patience to stay in one place for 4 hours, almost too patient. Then, he touched his chest, a sharp pain shooting continuously through his body. The wound. The blow dealt to him by the headless skeleton upon its fall had caused more internal damage than he had imagined. Moreover, his head was so hot, he hoped he hadn't contracted some strange illness. The Flower Witch hesitated for a moment and answered. "You might have caught a cold." "A cold?" Chen Qi touched his forehead with his hand, and it was burning hot. It seemed like a severe cold. Chen Qi recalled his own actions over the past few days. Playing with a sea dragon in a heavy rain, playing with a dragon on a volcano, playing with water elves in the sea. It was about time he caught a cold. Not to would be impolite. Chen Qi took out his water bottle and took a few sips. At this time, the Flower Witch asked curiously. Are you really okay? The flower witch looked at Chen Qi, and there was a substantial, obvious bruise on his chest that looked as though it had caved in. It's okay, it shouldn't be a problem. It's just a small injury, a few days of rest and I'll be fine. As long as it's not fatal, it's a minor issue. Chen Qi finished drinking a mouthful of water, adjusted his breathing, and the pain in his body gradually subsided. Wait, why were the two of them discussing these things? It was like a doctor caring for a patient. At this time, shouldn't they be discussing the mission first, talking about the dragon breath grass? He had managed to get a whole 10 stalks of dragon breath grass. Why isn't the flower witch asking him about it? Chen Qi took the initiative and said. Flower witch, I've already got the dragon breath grass. Got it. A small yellow flower of surprise bloomed above the flower witch's head. She had thought that Chen Qi encountered some misfortune on Dragon Nest Island. That's why she didn't bring up the dragon breath grass, fearing that it might trigger his sad memories. That's very efficient. The flower witch muttered as if she saw a workaholic speed running through the crack. Chen Qi took out the 10 stalks of dragon breath grass from his backpack card. Is this enough? 10 stalks of dragon breath grass. The blossoms of the flower witch could hardly be contained, and she instantly grew several more. 10 stalks of dragon breath grass were enough for her to make 5 bottles of potion. The flower witch nodded and took the dragon breath grass. It's completely enough, and there are even extras, but I don't have extra money to buy the additional ingredients, so I can only help you make the potion. He's really honest. Chen Qi returned to the boathouse and sailed the small houseboat out to sea. Next, Chen Qi handed over the pale scale fruit to the flower witch. He had already obtained the ingredients. Now it was the flower witch's time to perform. It's the real thing, and it's fresh pale scale fruit. The flower witch took the fruit and held it in the air, carefully examining it. Before coming to Shell Country, her sister had told her that the Witch Sea was blessed with outstanding people and customs, and hidden dragons crouched among the tigers. The people of the Witch Sea really did conceal dragons among crouching tigers. Even a chef was this amazing. The flower witch expressed her admiration. Chen Qi asked. How does it look, flower witch, can you handle it? The flower witch looked out to the distant sea. I can, but to create a perfect potion, I need an alchemy furnace, as well as tools for grinding the ingredients, and so on. In short, I need a dedicated workshop for potion making. A workshop? Where? Chen Qi asked. Given the flower witch's current circumstances, it would be tough for her to have a workshop. After all, the bounty on her head could buy several workshops. The flower witch crossed her arms. On a mysterious island near the edge of the sea, that was my home when I was an apprentice pharmacist as a child. Then, the flower witch blushed slightly as she gazed at Chen Qi's small houseboat, filled with envy. What a lovely, cozy little boat. If only she could have a boat of her own. The flower witch was stubborn all her life, not wanting to rely on others. Moreover, her teacher had instructed her never to let outsiders come to their home. But sometimes, there was no other choice. She needed to work hard to earn money. The flower witch coughed twice and said softly. That. I don't have my own boat, so, can you give me a ride? The dizzy Chen Qi looked at the poor flower witch. No problem, but you should be aware, my boat is a bit fast. Hey! Chen Qi walked into the boathouse, took out the sea chart, like a seasoned captain. Marked the location, ready to set sail. It was time to show off his boat skills. The flower witch took the sea chart and thought for a long time. It should be here, I lived in this place when I was a child, but now I can't remember clearly. Chen Qi looked at the spot marked on the sea chart and promptly sobered up. On the chart, the normal sea areas were in blue, with dangerous areas wrapped in red lines. The places smeared with deep black indicated those were forbidden lands, absolutely not to be entered at any cost. In simple terms, whoever goes there dies. Only those who had a screw loose in their head would venture into these blackened sea regions. Even the charts of the Black Whale Group didn't contain detailed information about these black areas. Chen Qi turned around and asked. Flower Witch, where exactly does your family live? Chapter 84, Black Earth. The Flower Witch paced back and forth on the ship, wrestling with her thoughts for a long time. A piece of fertile soil, I remember my teacher telling me its name is Black Soil Land, a great place to cultivate medicinal herbs and vegetables. Black Soil Land. Chen Qi felt a sudden shock. Black Soil Land was the legendary masterpiece of the Flower Witch. He recalled in the legends that the Flower Witch had buried the bodies of 100,000 soldiers there, and it was also a wasteland destroyed by a great whale. Chen Qi spread his hands and said, "Can we really go to this place? Are you sure it won't lead to trouble?" Curious flowers popped up above the Flower Witch's head. "It shouldn't cause any problems, I spent my childhood there. The only danger is that in that place, there are some strangely shaped sea beasts." Some sea beasts. Chen Qi's spirits lifted, and he looked again at the large expanse of black on the sea chart. After all, he was set on mastering these seas. Just a dark forbidden land close to the coast. Besides, that was also the Flower Witch's home. "Let's go then." Filled with curiosity, Chen Qi walked to the control panel and started the boat's engine. The rumble roared. The little boat set sail towards the forbidden land. And just as the boat embarked on its voyage, in the water, 7 deep-sea water elves immediately started to dash about frantically. "Done for." Chen Qi touched his somewhat hot forehead, nearly forgetting about the deep-sea water elves in the water. Bang bang bang! The 7 deep-sea water elves, like men chasing after a departing girlfriend, leaped onto the boat. "Wah wah wah!" The deep-sea water elves cried out in panic, thinking they had been abandoned by their master. "I definitely have a fever." Chen Qi picked up a water elf and gave it a squeeze. "What's this?" Several small yellow flowers sprouted above the Flower Witch's head, and beneath them, her eyes shone with a tinge of envy. Chen Qi stroked the deep-sea water elf, which was soft. "Water elf, my little pet. Quite comfortable." The Golden Flower Bird Kingdom was the land of guardian beasts, so for the Flower Witch, having pets shouldn't be rare. In many wealthy households, cats and dogs were kept in groups. And the Flower Witch was one of the foremost nobles of the Golden Flower Bird Kingdom. To Chen Qi's surprise, however, a sorrowful little blue flower popped above the witch's head, and he suddenly felt her journey was very sad. "Why do you not only have a ship but also little pets? Many of life's pains come from comparison." The Flower Witch swallowed hard, wrestled with her thoughts for a long while, and then coughed twice. "May I touch it? I have a unique technique." "Sure." The Flower Witch spread her hands, and she always had a fragrance about her that made her quite popular with pets. Unfortunately, the deep-sea water elves trembled slightly, seeming afraid, and huddled in the corner of the room. "These little guys are pretty shy." Chen Qi moved to the control panel. "If you find the chair uncomfortable, you can use a water elf as a cushion." The deep-sea water elves were immediately shocked. Having said that, Chen Qi took another drink of water and then concentrated on steering the little houseboat. The moon fell, and the little houseboat floated lonely on the sea, making the entire ocean seem exceptionally silent. In the light of the boat's lamp, the Flower Witch sat on the chair, holding a pestle and began the simplest processing of her medicinal herbs from Flower Island. The deep-sea water elves, on the other hand, ran away from her bosom and bumped into each other on the bed. "White mist, whispers of the night." Chen Qi kept a vigilant eye on the outside view. Unlike past voyages, the destination this time was truly a forbidden sea area, and any moment of negligence could lead to a watery grave, becoming a sacrifice to the sea goddess. Now, they had already approached the forbidden land, Blackbeard Land. Chen Qi focused his attention. Regrettably, the small houseboat only had one cramped room, a most basic control panel, and no instruments for real-time observation of the surroundings. Some pitch-black, twisted shadows swam under the boat. At this time, the Flower Witch stood up, ready to calm Chen Qi's frightened emotions. "Don't worry, the creatures under the boat are sea beasts known as blackbeards, a type of creature that fears light. They won't dare to approach places with light." Chen Qi slowed the boat down. "I'll be careful." "Are we heading towards that opening?" In front of them lay a massive black island, with copious amounts of black mist spreading out from it as if it were alive. Above the island, one could see numerous cracks, as if a god had chopped it with a crimson axe, breaking it into many pieces. To enter the interior of this dark island, one had to navigate through these narrow cracks. The Flower Witch leaned against the boat window and pointed. "That widest entrance there, we should head in through here. By the way, Mr. Chef, the upcoming scene might be somewhat scary, but you mustn't be frightened. They won't harm you." "They are." Chen Qi suddenly felt excited. Even though sea beasts were terrifying. Fortunately, he had been through a lot and could remain calm now even if Godzilla showed up. The bright small houseboat navigated through the narrow crack, heading towards the interior. Just then, Chen Qi vision suddenly brightened. On these pitch-black lands, massive amounts of black mist billowed, and some barely visible black tendrils dangled in the water. On these black tendrils, one could also see some torn knives. The knives bore no signs of corrosion. Recently, had someone come to this place? Chen Qi thought to himself. Don't worry, the Blackbeards fear light, as long as we don't approach them, they won't move. The flower witch made a quieting gesture. However, against her expectations, she saw the Blackbeards slowly rise and twist in their direction, trying to get closer. If it weren't for the Blackbeards being too short and fearing light, the houseboat would have met with misfortune. Why? With my strength, this shouldn't be happening. The flower witch crossed her arms and lowered her head, lost in thought. She understood something and said with a motherly tone. Mr. Chef, the Blackbeards attack weaker creatures, considering them food. Your spiritual power field is too weak, which is why they have set their sights on you. However, rest assured, even if they all attack together, as long as I am here, they won't even harm a hair on you. Weak individuals become prey for the Blackbeards like fish. The flower witch patted her chest, possessing the demeanor of an elder sister looking after her younger brother. Such was the sense of safety brought by a strong transcendent. Chen Qi hesitated. No, they were just coming closer, probably just wanting to say hello, to give him a hug. Of course, even though the Blackbeards were friendly. Chen Qi, having no interest in the unsightly Blackbeards, lacked any desire for them. Chen Qi had seen many sea beasts by now and had stringent requirements for them. He most wanted to encounter the kind of sea beast from which you could easily repeatedly harvest resources. Sort of like ghost fire fish. If not, they should at least have a higher aesthetic value, like the black ship sea dragon. Chen Qi observed, and under the protection of the Blackbeards, he could vaguely make out some broken weapons. Not only that, but there also seemed to be some smaller sea beasts. But regrettably, with the flower witch on the boat, it wouldn't be appropriate for him to make a move. Under the illumination of the boat's light, the little houseboat passed through the region of Blackbeards and slowly penetrated deeper into the island. Chen Qi stopped the boat. An entrance resembling a wormhole appeared before him. It was very similar to the entrance of an E-grade crack. The flower witch looked upon this doorway, as if seeing her weaker self from more than a decade ago. She had arrived home. Chapter 85, The Vegetable Garden. Chen Qi stopped the boat, holding a kerosene lamp as he walked out of the boathouse, scrutinizing the closed portal gate. This gate could only be opened by the flower witch. The flower witch took off her cloak, revealing her white shoulders and legs. A layer of pale blue spiritual power appeared at her feet. Spell water walking. She easily stepped onto the water and approached the portal gate. Need some help? The flower witch worried that Chen Qi might not be able to jump over. Learning this spell and excelling in the first-year test at the Golden Flower Bird Kingdom Academy could earn top marks. Walking on water was really not difficult. Chen Qi tossed away the water elf and stepped on the deep-sea water elf, reaching the portal gate even faster. Two small flowers popped up on the flower witch's head. Being from the guardian beast country, she suddenly felt she had seen too little. Ahem, open the door. The flower witch said, her voice and appearance being the key. Under the flower witch's command, the closed portal gate slowly opened, revealing a narrow crack. Chen Qi followed behind the flower witch, continually entering within. At first, it was extremely narrow, allowing only one person to pass through. The farther they went, the broader it became. After walking for about 2 minutes, Chen Qi emerged from the entrance. Moonlight shone on his face, a vast green prairie unfolding before his eyes. This is... Chen Qi was amazed by the expansive scene before him. You have entered the crack black land. Crack. Chen Qi instinctively became cautious. He was now in another world. With the descent of crack tide, no one knew what might happen inside the crack. The flower witch walked ahead. Do not worry too much, this crack has undergone high-level harmless containment treatment. The pollution has been removed, it should be fine. High-level crack harmless technology was an extremely complex technology requiring the simultaneous mobilization of the Meteorological Bureau, the Hunter Association, the Purification Department, and the Crack Stabilization Department, along with other transcendent forces, to achieve. Simplified, only state-level power could accomplish this. Harmless treatment, this was the witch's background. Chen Qi excitedly glanced around. The bright moonlight covered the vast grassland, casting a gentle glow on each blade of grass. It looked just like a normal prairie. The flower witch took a deep breath and walked towards her small home. An open-air pharmacy. The pharmacy was filled with a faint herbal aroma, interwoven with the dust particles in the air, creating a unique atmosphere. A cabinet nearby was full of various herb bottles, with labels so faded they were illegible. In the corner, old alchemy equipment stood silently, its metal parts rusted, but its past power and magic still palpable. Please wait a moment, let me clean up a bit, then I'll help you make a potion with the pale scale fruit. The flower witch picked up an old broom, a feather duster, and a rag, and quickly cleaned up. Can I take a look around? Chen Qi curiously glanced around. The flower witch loved the joy of cleaning dust. No problem, just treat this as an ordinary place, no need for formalities. Chen Qi took a step forward and bent down, his pupils contracting. In the distant low plain, he could see endless tombstones. These tombstones were old and worn, at least a century old. Roughly estimated, the number of tombstones here surpassed 10,000. What are these tombstones? He curiously asked. The flower witch turned her head and sighed. Several hundred years ago, when the Witch Sea first faced the Great Whale's descent, 10,000 soldiers polluted by the Great Whale's body turned into its black tide army, destroying everything in sight. The Great Whale, an ancient being from the era of darkness, once infected, no medicine or surgery could save. 500 years ago, the previous flower witch handled them all here and buried them, setting up these tombstones. The reason the flower witch killed so many was because of the Great Whale, but except for scholars studying alchemy, few knew this. People only remembered the terror of the flower witch. Chen Qi stomped underfoot, meaning that beneath him lay the corpses of 10,000 people. This was the power of the Great Whale. He suddenly felt a chill in his heart. No matter what era, 10,000 people was a terrifying number. Chen Qi let out a long breath. Before absolute extraordinary power, people were merely numbers. Many ancient monsters fed on human emotions and spirits. Weak transcendents would only become fodder for the monsters, making them stronger. This was why every nation had rules prohibiting any individual or organization from privately venturing to the border. After cleaning the pharmacy, the flower witch took out the pale scale fruit and began making the potion. At this moment, she suddenly became a bit sad, a few blue sorrowful flowers blooming on her head. She looked at Chen Qi, murmuring, "Chef, if you can, after making some money, it's best to head to the inland cities of Shell Country. Don't stay in the Witch Sea anymore." She had a good impression of Chen Qi, a brave man trying to survive, daring the storm and the risk of sea monsters to sail alone on the ocean. Though she wasn't sure if he was related to the report agency. "Why?" Chen Qi asked curiously. The flower witch hesitated for a moment before speaking. "According to my teacher's prophecy, the Great Whale will eventually cross the border, and the entire Witch Sea will be destroyed. Though just a prophecy, if possible, please stay away from this place. Even the old monsters in the mainland probably can't stop the Great Whale's descent." "And I?" the flower witch said as the flowers on her head wilted. Many who perished in the sea didn't even have a tombstone. Chen Qi did his best to appear surprised. This prophecy was not comprehensive enough. The Witch Sea's destruction? The whole world would be doomed. Other regions wouldn't fare much better. This place was so wonderful, with its wines and sea, and friendly sea monsters. Leaving wasn't an option. Chen Qi shook his head. "I'll consider it, but the crack tide is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us ordinary transcendents without backgrounds." Chen Qi didn't hide his strong desire for power. According to the background of the new Sun game, only absolute power could survive in this wave. As a transmigrator player, he had to become as strong as possible. He couldn't yet involve himself with the Black Whale group or the main narrative of the sea. The flower witch stood there for a moment, nearly forgetting that although the person before her was just a first-order transcendent, the dragon's breath grass in her head was obtained thanks to him. "Sorry, I said too much. However, please still be careful, especially stay away from the Black Whale pirate group and the Sea God pirate group." The flower witch focused on making the potion. With nothing to do, Chen Qi wandered the grassland with the deep-sea water elf. Suddenly, he noticed a plot of land growing vegetables. Chen Qi's eyes lit up. This seemed to be a vegetable garden. "Flower witch, can these vegetables be used?" The garden still has vegetables growing, so yes." The flower witch recalled the days of gardening a decade ago. She didn't expect that after 10 years, the vegetables were still so well preserved. Chen Qi squatted down and pulled up a vegetable. These ingredients weren't ordinary, but specially cultivated extraordinary ingredients. Chen Qi casually picked a few, and a special prompt appeared before him. 10-year extraordinary cabbage. Nature form, cup, flower. Description, extraordinary vegetable cultivated with spiritual power. Consuming it can promote digestion, body growth during the growth period, and slightly enhance constitution. 10-year extraordinary carrot. Nature form, cup, flower. Description, extraordinary vegetable cultivated with spiritual power. Consuming it can enhance vision, and with long-term use, greatly improve vision, and slightly increase inspiration. What on earth are 10-year extraordinary vegetables? Do they really take 10 years to grow? Chen Qi looked at the vegetable garden, about the size of a small basketball court. The vegetables here could feed an ordinary person for a year. His culinary skills might have found a new purpose. Chapter 86. Flower Witch's Fantasy Time. The moonlight cast slanting shadows as Chen Qi gathered cabbages and carrots into a basket in the field. Perfect, he hadn't completed his daily task yet, and both he and the flower witch had spent a lot of energy on Flower Island. Chen Qi felt hot and particularly hungry. Flower witch, what would you like to eat? While the flower witch was busy making medicine, it was the perfect time for him to cook a meal and showcase his culinary skills. A few cheerful little yellow flowers sprouted from the flower witch's head. I like all vegetables, except fatty meat. Liking everything was actually the most troubling thing. Chen Qi glanced at the vegetable garden. Besides the common cabbages and potatoes, carrots were the most plentifully grown. There was just a small piece of meat left in his backpack card, just enough to make stir-fried pork with cabbage and sautéed shredded carrots. This meadow was the perfect place for a picnic. Chen Qi took out a pot, a cutting board, and some firewood from his backpack card. Click, 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 click. He sliced the carrot and tore the cabbage by hand. He heated the oil, sautéed the meat until it was fragrant, then added the vegetables and seasoning. Then he sprinkled some sole seasoning and a bit of garlic shoots. 2 delicious vegetable stir-fries were quickly prepared. Chen Qi couldn't wait to have a bite. Because of his increased constitution, his appetite had been quite large lately, and he had been eating a lot of meat. You have cooked transcendent sautéed shredded carrots, earning 90 spiritual points. The flower witch was in front of an alchemical furnace, as if she was cut off from everything else. The inspiration element in pale scale fruit is too high. I need to add 3 grams of nightmare fuel, 2 grams of depressed mushrooms to counteract excessive inspiration. Yes, put all these ingredients together, and start the first wave of heating. The flower witch belonged to the type who became absorbed in her work and forgot herself. Such enviable talent, I get distracted so easily. Chen Qi was subconsciously always aware of his surroundings, no matter what he was doing. He placed the dishes on a solid wood table and waited quietly for the flower witch to finish her work. A moment later. The flower witch wiped the sweat from her forehead. The first step is done, now, wait for 20 minutes before proceeding to the second step of toxicity neutralization. At that moment, she sniffed the air, and her stomach growled loudly. Eating is one of the important things in this world. Chen Qi took out 2 ceramic bowls from his backpack card. Flower witch, you've worked hard. Let's postpone the alchemy for a bit and eat first. The flower witch was attracted by the fragrance. Thank you, indeed, you are a chef, it smells wonderful. However, she glanced at the side of the table. 10 years had passed, and the chairs had become shabby and dusty. As the mistress of the witch's home, how could she allow a guest to sit on a dusty chair? The flower witch rolled up her sleeves, ready to clean the chairs first. Chen Qi, without hesitation, looked at the water elves playing around and then suddenly grabbed one. No need, flower witch, I have a chair here. The 7 deep-sea water elves had already formed a hierarchy from oldest to youngest. The table wasn't tall, perfect for using deep-sea water elves as cushions. He placed a water elf at the side of the table to serve as a seat cushion. At the same time, he also cushioned his own bottom with a water elf. The deep-sea water elves were soft, and sitting on them was even more comfortable than a sofa. Won't it hurt them? The flower witch was startled and gently sat on the water elf with cautiousness. No worries. They are professionally trained, Chen Qi replied. The deep-sea water elf under the flower witch's bottom understood something but looked quite reluctant. It was a rare deep-sea water elf, a standout among water elves, and didn't want to be used as a cushion by anyone other than its master. Why should it be? Just because they were all deep-sea water elves, some were sat upon by the master, while others had to be sat on by stinky humans from who knows where. Looking at the eldest being sat on by the master, this deep-sea water elf gave a jealous look, started squirming, and expressed its dissatisfaction. The flower witch shivered a bit, wondering if she was so easily disliked by pets. Chen Qi gave the water elf a cold glare. "You're still not happy?" He communicated with his eyes to the deep-sea water elf beneath the flower witch's bottom. If it didn't behave, he would use it as water for boiling. Waku waku. The water elf reluctantly settled down. The flower witch shifted her buttocks. So bouncy, so soft. This feeling was even more comfortable than the fire dragon skin sofa back in her hometown. The flower witch started to eat. Chen Qi ate a piece of stir-fried meat and asked. "Flower witch, right, why did you specifically tell me to beware of the black whale group and the sea god group?" Because. The flower witch choked, took a sip of water, patted her chest, and slowly said. "When I was a child studying pharmacy, these two pirate groups existed. I was young then, but even so, I witnessed many of their atrocities. Even if you want to become a powerful transcendent, never join them. In the end, you will only become a monster, a non-human monster. These matters should be documented in the archives at the newspaper office, and once someone becomes an officer, one can never escape their clutches." Black whale group. Chen Qi fell into thought. To be honest, the crew of the Sazhark treated him quite well. One of the reasons he had escaped from the Black Whale group was due to various scandals about the group discussed on forums. Although pirates are supposed to yearn for freedom, the high-level players in this faction were restricted everywhere, like prisoners on death row. Chen Qi continued to ask, "Flower Witch, did you have a grudge against the Black Whale group since childhood?" The Flower Witch nodded and clenched her fists. "Yes, if I could, I'd kill Auntie, kill Father Whale. If it weren't for them, my teacher would not have." At this point, the Flower Witch stopped short. The information she revealed was obviously a bit too much. She wasn't afraid of Chen Qi leaking the information, as these details were also recorded in the newspaper. But for a first-order transcendent, knowing too much wasn't a good thing. Many secrets only bring death. If Chen Qi were also hunted by the Black Whale group, that would be troublesome. She was stubborn all her life and disliked involving others. Chen Qi tactfully asked no further questions. The matter of the Flower Witch was deeply connected to the main storyline of the Witch Sea, which also happens to be the toughest main storyline of the Witch Sea. Chen Qi solemnly reminded her. "Flower Witch, please be very careful, surviving is more important than anything else." His understanding of the Witch Sea's plot was limited. But he knew that the Flower Witch's experiences were far from smooth sailing. The Flower Witch finished off half a bowl of shredded carrots and changed the topic, sporting a slightly arrogant expression. "Well, Chef Sir, don't worry, I am the one who inherited the title of Flower Witch. Ordinary pirates, I don't even take them seriously. Someday, after fulfilling the previous witch's wish, my name will echo across these seas. By then, you'll be the chef friend of the new legend witch." The Flower Witch smiled, already envisioning her future. In her fantasies, she beat the Black Whale group with unparalleled strength and luck, and kicked the black ship Sea Dragon. She became a celebrity of the seas, received rewards from the city lord, and made headlines in the Dove Times. Eventually, she became a legendary witch, surpassing the first-generation Flower Witch. Passers-by would greet her on the street, and she could dine in restaurants without paying. After returning to the family that had looked down on her, she could hold her head high with pride. The Flower Witch ate a piece of cabbage and wore a pleased expression. Now was the time for fantasies. Hopefully, this day will come sooner. Chen Qi sighed inwardly, unlike other invincible protagonists in different sects. In her confrontations with the Black Whale group, the Flower Witch was often disastrously defeated. Without advancing to the 4th rank, a 3rd-rank captain under the Black Whale group could force out the Flower Witch's last resort, a life-consuming type of release move. All in all, the Flower Witch's battle record could only be described as a complete mess. It wasn't until later, after joining forces with the Blade Witch, that this steadily defeated situation began to improve slightly. Chen Qi's eyes shone brightly as he asked, "By the way, Flower Witch, may I ask your name?" Chapter 87, Chance Encounter. Upon the grassland, a breeze wafted by, causing the deep sea elves beneath their seats to shudder. The flower witch, holding a bowl, fell silent for a moment. Dislike your own name? Or unwilling to speak it? Chen Qi paused, as if he had asked a question he shouldn't have. On the gaming forums, the flower witch did have a name. But neither the flower witch herself nor the players liked to mention the flower witch's name. In the Witch Sea, only a title acknowledged by the world counted as a true name. Picking up a cabbage, the flower witch slowly said. Fen, my name is Fen, a very ordinary name. Chen Qi gave a slight smile. Simple, but quite nice. In this world, many people's names consist of a single, simple syllable with a simple meaning. Just like his own name in this world, Qi, symbolizing possibilities, enlightenment, and more. In the Golden Flower Bird Kingdom, Fen carries the meaning of the scent of flowers. Although the flower witch had been running around every day and probably hadn't bathed in many days, she really smelled nice. A name quite fitting for her. But in the Golden Flower Bird Kingdom, Fen is a rather common name, and it is used by many males, akin to Jason. Though the flower witch came from a noble background, her name was surprisingly ordinary. Therefore, the flower witch didn't really like others to mention her name. Chen Qi changed the subject. Speaking of which, flower witch, how much for one of the vegetables in your garden? I'd like to buy some. The flower witch wiped the grease from the corner of her mouth. Friendship price, 3,000, no, just take what you want. The dragon breath grass you gave me is quite valuable and enough to buy a lot of vegetables. Besides, I'm not very good at cooking. If you can turn these ingredients into delicious food, both my teacher and I would be happy. Just take what you want. Chen Qi's mouth fell open slightly. That was a whole vegetable garden. The flower witch laughed proudly. Although you can't tell, I'm really quite good at gardening. Gardening. The flower witch made a motion of carrying a hoe and explained. Yes, when I was a child, because I was recuperating, I always lived in the countryside. Our family's maxim is nobility and elegance. But in the countryside, there were no pianos, no flowers to plant, no piers to play with, and they wouldn't let me interact with pet beasts. Many elegant pursuits were beyond my reach. However, I thought about it. If planting flowers is elegant, then gardening should be elegant too. So, I started gardening with the maid, and I even got scolded for it later. Did you plant this whole vegetable garden? Chen Qi was somewhat admiring as he imagined it. The young flower witch, wielding a hoe twice her height, clearing the land. All these vegetables represent no small feat. The flower witch seemed to have found a kindred spirit. After all, her parents and relatives always told her that gardening was something only vulgar people did. A few lively small yellow flowers sprouted on her head. Yes, and do you know what? After I fulfill the lifelong wish of the flower witch, I plan to adopt an even more elegant and domineering title for myself. Chen Qi curiously pressed on, what title? The flower witch had inherited the wish and legacy of the first-generation flower witch, so she always identified herself with this title. Blood flower witch? The flower witch's ultimate move was to bloom flowers amid blood. Or fragrant witch. This was a more common title, but it suited the identity of the flower witch. Humph, it's a title I've thought about for a long time, exceptionally elegant. What is it? The flower witch puffed out her chest, touched her nose with her index finger, and said with a touch of pride. Vegetable witch. Chen Qi almost choked on a piece of cabbage. What kind of title was that? Why not call herself potato witch or cabbage witch? It's like turning the gluttonous witch into the eating rice witch, the angry witch into the wild witch, the ice witch into the ice cream witch, the despair witch into the depression witch. Mainly because, in Chen Qi view, vegetable also has another meaning. Vegetable, as in just practice. The flower witch asked expectantly, how about it, isn't it very elegant? Not bad. Chen Qi nodded in agreement. The flower witch revealed two happy little yellow flowers. Right, quite elegant, indeed. Unfortunately, I cannot abandon this name until I have fulfilled the wish of the flower witch. I must follow the path of my teacher to make everything better and to cure the illness. As the flower witch spoke, the flowers atop her head wilted slightly, a heavy sense of fate and illness pressing down. Striving for fame alone in this vast sea is no easy feat. And to challenge the great whale is to challenge fate itself. Only those of legend could achieve such a miracle. Beneath every legend lies countless scattered bones. No one knows how many who set out to sea are buried in the Witch Sea. Amidst their casual conversation, the food on the dining table was nearly finished. And the alchemy furnace began making bubbling sounds. Reluctantly, the flower witch rose from the water elf's side, resuming her potion brewing. Chen Qi had the deep-sea water elf tidy up the cutlery and dishes. Under his training, she had learned how to do the dishes and clean. He was confident that before long, the deep-sea water elf would also learn to fold blankets and give massages. A somewhat bored Chen Qi asked, "Flower witch, how much longer will you be?" "A few hours." Just watching the flower witch make potions wasn't much of an activity. Chen Qi slapped his book. "I want to take a look outside Black Land. I saw some excellent transcendent ingredients while I was sailing." "Ingredients?" the flower witch recalled for a moment. "In Black Land, indeed, there are many rare transcendent fish species. Although Blackbeard is of no danger to her. For Chen Qi, venturing unprepared into Black Land is like a lamb entering a wolf's den." The flower witch took out a bottle of black potion and handed it to Chen Qi. "The scent of this potion can repel Blackbeard. If you're venturing out, you can apply this potion so that Blackbeard won't attack you." "Thank you." Chen Qi took the potion and applied it from the top of his head to his feet. Then, he passed through the crack and returned to the Black Land Island. The morning sunlight shone on his dark hair. Chen Qi enjoyed the sun washing away his fatigue. "Is it daytime already?" The entire Black Land Island was like a vast reed field. Except these reeds were the taller Blackbeard. Chen Qi wandered through the dense Blackbeard, looking towards the water as he ventured deeper. After some time, he successfully found a rare sea beast. "What is this?" Chen Qi crouched down and picked up the black clam at his feet. Black clam. Introduction: Transcendent clam species, known for its sharp shells capable of biting humans, causing them to fall into a nightmare. Its inner black pearl can attract one's gaze, making it a rather nice jewel. 10 black clams, this is all money, they can be transplanted to the land of white trees. Chen Qi placed the black clams into his water bucket. The place of Black Land is too remote and broken. He decided to give the clams a better home. A pearl from a black clam can sell for about 70,000, 10 would fetch 700,000. Moreover, unlike ordinary clams, black clams are not to be underestimated, with very rapid pearl production. With the addition of ghost fire fish, saving up to buy a big ship wasn't just a dream. A path to wealth was already appearing before him. Chen Qi continued cautiously within the Blackbeard, seeking more black clams. Suddenly, he heard some familiar voices, along with the sound of a blade cutting through flesh. Boom! Boom! Besides that, there was the roaring sound of large machinery. "How about it, our great little ship doctor, how's the concentration of the black whale blood?" A familiar voice came from behind the Blackbeard wall. Chen Qi stopped in his steps, slowing his movements. In this forbidden land of Blackbeard, there were others. Chapter 88. Black Whale Blood. Black Whiskers stood like a massive wall, forming a barrier between him and the source of the voices. Muffled voices came again from beyond the whiskers. "I'm still extracting, so please keep quiet." Analyzing the concentration of black whale blood is a task that requires extreme patience and specialization. "Understood, understood. No worries, take your time, our best ship's doctor. We have all the time in the world since we have to wait here for our prey to take the bait." Chen Qi pricked up his ears, trying his utmost to analyze the voices. 2 men and 1 woman. The woman's voice was somewhat dispirited, the men's voices were one older and raspy, and the other had a magnetic baritone quality. These 2 voices took him back to a ship being battered by pouring rain. The black whale group saw Shark's little raven, and the black-eyed captain. Why were they here? What were they doing here? A multitude of questions sprang up in Chen Qi's mind. Both were third-tier transcendents. At this stage, transcendents were also respectfully referred to as masters. Third-tier transcendents not only had mastered body forging skill and breathing techniques, but the powerful abilities granted by their transcendent professions also enabled them to establish high-order combat schools. Their strength was sufficient to defeat an army of 1,000 constructed by mere mortals. In short, they were not opponents he could contend with at present. If discovered, I'd be like a weak little sparrow, completely at their mercy. Chen Qi carefully backed away, slowly as if he were a stone sculpture. However, behind him, voices of people conversing arose. This place wasn't home to just one group of pirates. Trouble, it seems like I'm trapped here, Chen Qi muttered to himself. If not for these black whiskers that were twice as tall as a man and could shield spiritual power perception, at such a close distance, he would have been discovered already. And at that moment, something unexpected happened. As his movements slowed, the black whiskers beneath his feet began to stir. Slowly, the whiskers wove through his trouser legs, under his clothes, and gently caressed his skin. These whiskers took advantage of his inability to make any significant movements to ambush him. Though this was merely their way of showing affection, and quite comfortably so. But they're too loud. Keep it down, now is the worst time to be discovered. Oddly enough, Chen Qi now felt like a naked man hiding in someone else's wife's wardrobe. The little raven looked over and mumbled, "These black whiskers might be cute, but the sound of their wriggling is really noisy." Chen Qi held his breath in that instant. As a sea breeze blew by, the whiskers swayed. And then, through a tiny gap in the whiskers, Chen Qi saw in an instant ships upon the sea, heavy salvage machinery, the little raven with a microscope, and a man wearing a pure black mask. And the black-eyed captain's eyes, dark as the abyss, flickered towards him. The black-eyed captain said with irritation, "Indeed, the noise from those black whiskers is truly annoying." Following that, his gaze shifted away from the whiskers. Phew! Chen Qi breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. He wasn't discovered. Lucky for me, the black-eyed captain has poor perceptive abilities. Moreover, the whiskers clinging to his body and clothes had formed a natural black ghillie suit. Now, he had perfectly blended in with the black whiskers. Just wait a bit longer, acting rashly would only expose himself. Chen Qi slowly squatted down, enduring the strange sensation brought by the whiskers, and maintained a posture he could hold for a long time. Afterward, he focused his attention on the trio beyond the whiskers. They seemed to be discussing something very important now. This was a good spot for eavesdropping. Opposite Blackbeard, on a small boat on the pitch-black sea. It was a research vessel, equipped with a small instrument table, and beneath the boat, a large number of tools were placed. Little Raven stared at Blackbeard for a while, then withdrew her gaze and continued fiddling with the microscope on the table. The concentration of black whale blood extracted from this mutated black blood fish has reached 70%, which is a considerably high concentration of black whale blood, black glove. Underneath Little Raven's hands, there was a black object the size of a human head. Rather than blood, it was more like a squirming lump of black flesh. A mechanical voice sounded once again. "How much?" "A 70% concentration, Raven, you truly are the finest ship doctor in the black whale group. This concentration is enough to make those from the ocean deity cult kneel down and kowtow 100 times, said the one called Black Glove. The person speaking was named Black Glove, wearing a black mask and dressed in all black, wrapped in a black scarf, topped by a slick black top hat, with thick, black felt boots and black gloves. A person wrapped up tight in his own covering. Black Glove. In the shadows, Chen Qi let a drop of cold sweat fall. On the gaming forums, he was a notoriously tough boss. Although he was also a third-order transcendent, he had completed the construction of his own style, Shadow Stream, making his strength far surpass Black-Eyed Captain and Little Raven. Flower which seemed to have fought against him too, and the result was a draw. But what was black whale blood again? Chen Qi reflected for a moment. It seemed to be something extracted from mutated monster fish. Chen Qi remembered that the deep-sea merchants had asked for something similar. Black Glove, delighted with the high concentration of black whale blood, exclaimed, "Raven, I knew that in these dull times, I wasn't wrong to wait for you guys. Little Raven, you have talent, a fishing captain who has failed, a broken-down sauce hark, this isn't the place for you." The air was suddenly thick with tension. The irritable black-eyed captain gripped the new sword he bought for 100,000 shell coins. "Shut your mouth, Black Glove, even though I haven't achieved much recently, you are not much better. Your Wild Dog Gang and Black Rabbit Gang in Moonstone City were all captured in one fell swoop, weren't they? You're not even willing to go there and retrieve your subordinates' corpses." Black Glove spoke sharply. "You lack ability, while I only encountered a natural disaster. Who asked those little rabbits to run into the black ship Sea Dragon and the monsters of the ocean deity cult?" Grinding his teeth, Black-Eyed Captain was upset, but his recent achievements did not give him the right to talk back to Black Glove. Moreover, strictly speaking, Black Glove was already his superior. Black Glove gently stroked the lump of black whale blood. "Black-Eyed Captain, you were once part of the hunter operation, the organization gave you a chance, but you brought back nothing but casualties to the organization. Go to hell, you maggot lurking in the shadows, retorted the black-eyed captain furiously but helplessly. Ah, keep the insults coming. Black Glove, who seemed to have the upper hand in the argument, let out a sound of satisfaction, then pulled out a special glass tube and handed it to Little Raven. Little Raven, pack this thing properly. Oh, and I've called you here not just to help me with the black whale blood, but also to share some vital news with you all. What is it? Recently, all our operations in Moonstone City have been uncovered, and a lot of key intelligence has fallen into the hands of the press and the Navy. Because of the leak, one of the magnificent whale father's children, a cotter who had served the Black Whale Group loyally for 20 years, met an unfortunate death. Black Glove leaned in close to Little Raven, his words carrying a hint of threat. Something was wrong. Little Raven's palms began to sweat. An intelligence leak, that really is unfortunate. We've recruited too many people in the Black Whale Group, and there are always some bastards who would betray us for money. Black Glove didn't speak, but fumbled in his pockets. Little Raven's heart rate spiked suddenly. Had her cover, after so many years, finally been blown? Chapter 89, Son of the Black Whale. Spiritual power emerged at the foot of the man in black gloves, as he lightly stepped onto the water and said. It wasn't those minor characters who leaked the information, but rather intelligence about Hunter operations and the Witch, and as a result, our Black Whale Group has lost an important officer. Lil Raven maintained his usual back-talking stance. That officer really was unlucky, he died a terrible, pitiful death. So, what does this have to do with us? It probably wouldn't be discovered. Lil Raven focused on putting the black whale blood into the glass bottle. The man in black gloves stood up straight, his voice cold. Of course it concerns you, Lil Raven. The air had frozen solid in an instant. The man in black gloves took out a whale ring from his pocket. An officer has died, and now, his place is yours, Lil Raven. This is Father Whale's command, now you two are a child of Father Whale, an officer of the Black Whale Group. Lil Raven gaped open-mouthed, me. The other two men present were also extremely shocked. An officer of the Black Whale Group, also known as a child of Father Whale. To become a child of Father Whale was extremely difficult. It required not only outstanding contributions to the Black Whale Group but also the personal approval of Father Whale. Like the black-eyed captain, he had been in the Black Whale Group for at least 20 years, evolving from a young Englishman abducted forcefully by a matron to the formidable middle-aged man he was now. Even after having dedicated his entire youth to the Black Whale Group, the black-eyed captain was still just an ordinary captain, and had never received the recognition of Father Whale. Becoming a child of Father Whale meant eligibility to access the secret information of the Black Whale Group and more resources. In the future, it also opened up the possibility of promotion to the 4th rank. In the eyes of others, the 4th rank was known as a legend, whose power appeared godlike to ordinary people. An ordinary person's endpoint, reaching the 3rd rank, would consume half of their life savings. In this era, where high-order cracks were completely monopolized by nobility, the door to the 4th rank was a massive wall insurmountable to ordinary people. Once one became a 4th rank, it meant eligibility to join the shell country's guilds and workshops, becoming someone who shaped rules and touched immortality. Why? Even though his subordinate had become an officer, the black-eyed captain felt a confluence of emotions, indescribable at this moment. Lil Raven also asked in disbelief, why? I haven't really done anything substantial. In the Hunter operation, we haven't even found the deep-sea Hunter's treasure yet. The eyes under the man in black gloves mask shifted. Indeed, Raven, but it's not your fault, it's all the black-eyed captain's fault. You have the ability to extract black whale blood, and you even sent 2 research papers on sea beasts to Bay Country Royal University, including the origins of sea beasts and the classification of monster blood. Having such a deep understanding of monsters is a talent, a hard-to-replicate talent. Before you, no one could refine black whale blood with a concentration over 50%. Just because I can extract black whale blood with a concentration over 50%. Lil Raven challenged. Yes, the black whale blood in your hands is something that can change fate. The man in black gloves handed her the black whale ring symbolizing her new status. This is the raw gemstone of talent, Lil Raven. From now on, you are like me, an officer of the Black Whale Group, and we will rise together to the crest of the waves. Lil Raven slowly accepted the ring. The Black Whale Group somehow knew about her having sent papers to Bay Country Royal University. If it weren't for the raven mask, they would see a panicked bird. Having been undercover for several years, she had actually mixed her way into becoming a corps officer. And possibly the youngest corps officer in the Black Whale group. She was still such a naive kid. Lil Raven touched her hair, knowing that, as an officer in the Black Whale group, the salary and resources she received now far exceeded those provided by her undercover identity. The man in black gloves clapped his hands. Congratulations, Lil Raven. In the future, concerning the forbidden creation of meat-cutting bone breaking, we will likely also need your help. To be able to participate in that event. The black-eyed captain felt a chill in his heart, unable to describe his feelings at that moment. Human joys and sorrows do not coincide. Initially, he had taken a notorious black doctor on board, who now actually qualified to step into the domain of legends. And he had just recently lost his black blade, searching for it all over the Moonstone City Islands to no avail. Once again, the image of a black-haired boy surfaced in his mind, a frail boy sick to the marrow, an unfortunate boy parasitized by a sea beast and sunk into the depths of the sea. Missing him. How wonderful it would be to see him again, how wonderful. The black-eyed captain sighed deeply. The black glove paid no attention to the black-eyed captain's mood. By the way, black-eyed captain, don't worry anymore. Sooner or later, you too will qualify to become a son of the whale father. For now, I have a new mission for you here. The black-eyed captain looked curious. A new mission? The black glove looked around Blackbeard Land. Yes, according to the latest news from the Eye of Long Voyage, the place we are now, Blackbeard Land, not only has black whale blood but was also once the residence of a witch. The black-eyed captain cast aside his dejected expression. A witch's residence? Are you sure? No mistake, although it's a low possibility, we can't rule out the chance of a witch coming. Your Sazhark will just be responsible for guarding here, and incidentally, checking if there are any new mutant creatures. Is there any compensation? The black glove coldly replied, none. The black-eyed captain's expression turned fierce, and he clenched his fists. Isn't this just letting us rot here? I still have to pay my crew. The black glove spoke fiercely. Black-eyed captain, don't think that you, having failed repeatedly, still have a say. I'm telling you, don't think I don't know about the young man because of whom you lost the black blade. You're not some pampered pretty boy kept by a granny. If you want compensation, show some results. Each of the black glove's words, like a blade, struck the soft underbelly of the black-eyed captain. Damn it! The black-eyed captain clenched his teeth hard and could only swallow his anger. Fine, but just so you know, I'm not good at locating people. The crow's gaze glanced briefly at the Blackbeard, then quickly changed the subject. The possibility that a witch would live here seems too low, doesn't it? The witch couldn't have already arrived, could she? What are you talking about, Crow? The black glove knew that the crow was famously jinxed. Just then, a sea breeze blew. The Blackbeard swayed slowly like reeds. It was so quiet. The black glove became alert. Besides the three of them as admirals, there should be other pirates nearby. Moreover, they had just heard some strange noises. Gentlemen, something seems off, we might have encountered something strange again. The black glove concentrated a pitch-black shadow at his fingertips, entwining like a small snake. Gazing directly at this small snake made one feel cold, and stirred intense feelings of inferiority, hatred, and sadness. He lightly tapped the surface of the water with his fingertips. Shadow wave, a type of explorative magic, could detect high-spirit entities within 100 meters. A jet-black wave of spiritual power spread from that spot, sweeping over the spiritual entities within 100 meters. How is it? The crow focused his gaze on the Blackbeard, asking. The black glove slowly stood up, spoke with a serious tone. The game is on, gentlemen, a third-rank master with a floral appearance is approaching us. Chapter 90. I'm here to avenge you. A third-order transcendent with floral appearance. The black-eyed captain gently stepped on the surface of the water, moving forward with his blade in hand. He looked into the distance, where a large number of blood-stained petals floated down the river to their feet. Floral appearance symbolized surpassing, nature, and art, and related professions often lacked prowess in battle. As a result, the black-eyed captain walked on the water leisurely, as if the situation was firmly in his grip. The black glove stepped forward. Black Eye, are you out of your mind? Showing off at a time like this? Show some respect, this is the Flower Witch. The Flower Witch, The little crow's heart fluttered with excitement and she waved her hands. As a fellow pharmacist, the flower witch was the grandmother of witch sea potion learning. Her idol. Since childhood, she grew up listening to stories of the flower witch burying 100,000 people in the ground. For a long time, she believed that humans grew out of the soil. It wasn't until she was 15 that the little crow learned how humans normally reproduced. Unfortunately, her current identity didn't allow her to ask the flower witch for an autograph. Moreover, this flower witch was only a third order, not the legendary witch. Be careful, you guys. The little crow's dream of getting an autograph collapsed, and with an indifferent attitude, she stood on the rocking boat, continuing her work. She hadn't yet poured the extracted black whale blood into the glass bottles. After all, she was a non-water walking nurse, hanging around in the back was just fine. She turned her head, more curious about what cute little sea beast was hiding behind the black beard. The flower witch was discovered? Chen Qi, completely wrapped in black beard, no longer hid his voice but took out his most powerful beast hunting handgun and loaded it. Among them, the Black Glove, as a third-tier shadow-related profession malicious slanderer, had the strength to fight the flower witch to a draw. Together with the black-eyed captain and the little crow, if they fought, it was sure to be a one-sided battle. If the battle was lost, both the flower witch and he could end up as captives of the black whale group. There's only so much I can do. In the darkness, Chen Qi gripped the firearm in his hand. Although he had developed well, fighting across two ranks was simply unrealistic. Even the little crow's small fists were more than he could handle. Moreover, his constitution wasn't sufficient to use the residual fire touch. The best option was to follow the Blackbeard, using the water elf and firearms as support. The black-eyed captain and the black glove stepped across the water, moving towards the flower witch. The wind howled through the Blackbeard, sounding like the clarion call before a battle. At the end of their vision, a girl covered in blossoms appeared. She bathed in fresh blood, her withered magic wand emitting a series of shrieks like the whispers of monsters, appearing as if she were a forbidden monster that had broken containment. The blood-red blossoms symbolizing anger bloomed heatedly with the boiling blood beneath her skin. She plucked the blossoms that blocked her vision from her flesh, revealing her blood-red right eye. Near the scientific research boat was a pool of red blood. Beneath the little crow's feet were bucket after bucket of fresh flesh and blood. The flower witch sighed. Am I too late? Since Chen Qi had not returned, she came out of the crack to search for his whereabouts. Following the trail with a tracking spell, she chased all the way here, only to discover pirates lurking nearby. At that moment, she vaguely felt that Chen Qi had met with misfortune. Now, seeing the blood-covered little crow, she could almost be sure of it. Chen Qi, a chef by profession, had ended up as food on the chopping block. Although she still had many questions about Chen Qi, he was the first person she had met upon arriving in the Witch Sea. Such a dashing young man, such a hard-working young man. He cooked delicious meals, and even commanded a guardian beast. Damn it, she couldn't stand it, was a good person destined to have a gun pointed at them. It was just right to settle new and old hatreds at once. Qi, I will avenge you. Anger blazed in the crimson eyes of the flower witch. Hand over the corpse, and I'll leave you with a complete one. Corpses? The black glove looked around, the only corpses here were the mutated fish with black blood. Ha 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 ha. With a big laugh, the black glove spread his arms. Be grateful, be grateful. I never expected that the legendary flower witch would also desire a corpse rich with black whale blood, longing for the way to eternal life. Though wearing a dark mask, there was an infinite mockery in the black glove's words. However, flower witch, why are you so angry, did you lose a dear one? Crackling. From the flower witch's magic wand, red lightning burst forth from the tip. A basic attack spell, branching type. Two bolts of spiritual power formed lightning emitted screeching sounds as they surged towards the black glove. The high-energy spell, like countless searing blades, ferociously tore apart his flesh and blood. Abundant crimson blood gushed from the black glove's body. The black glove twisted his neck suddenly, making a sound like breaking branches. Great, this is just fantastic. Flower witch, is this all the strength you have? Haven't had your meal? Bring on some more. Layer upon layer of black pus sacs pierced through his body, then twisted and converged, forming new flesh. The flower witch gripped her magic wand. As opposed to the usual circumstance, the black gloves actually withstood the hit with brute force. Under normal circumstances, a human body, without taking any potions, would absolutely be incapable of such grotesque regeneration. Her attack did not have the desired effect. The figure before her in the black gloves was not merely a flow of chi power nor armor but an even more formidable and terrifying forbidden school of combat. My turn now. Endless squirming darkness appeared on the body of the man in black gloves, viscous blood churned, and the tips of his fingers once again bore a pitch-black little snake. In an instant, the small black snake contorted and swelled, sprouting solid flesh, enlarging nearly 1,000 times, like a rapidly inflating balloon creature. Shadow Serpent. Devour. The enormous serpent's ferocious head dove down, crashing towards the Flower Witch. The Flower Witch raised her magic wand, forming a shield with a floral pattern in front of her. Basic defense spell. Spiritual power shield. The serpent clashed against the shield, sparking and creating a cacophony of hisses. But in that instant, a blurred silhouette dashed to the side of the Flower Witch and drew a long blade from his waist. Draw sword slash. Like a demon released from its cage, a long blade was drawn, slashing through the air with a ripping light. The perception of spiritual power by the black-eyed captain was weak and mages found it difficult to sense his chi power as well. The spiritual power shield was very effective against spell attacks of the same spiritual power makeup. However, it was significantly less effective against the close combat techniques that used chi power to enhance strength and speed. Third rank, an incomplete class of shadow blade appearance. Rogue. The Flower Witch turned her head, her hand wielding the wand swiftly rotating to cross in front of her chest. Basic melee move. Great staff block. Bang. Sparks flew. I can't hold it back, I'm only a pharmacist major with part-time mage knowledge, familiar with some basic spells. The Flower Witch clenched her teeth. No choice, I must use this move. High order melee spell, on-site explosion. In front of the Flower Witch, a surging ball of spiritual power violently converged, as if infused with infinite thunder. Compress, compress, compress. Until it reached its limit. Boom. Their attacks contacted for a moment, like lightning converging, creating a massive explosion that stirred great waves. Beneath the colossal waves, the three rapidly distanced themselves. The dust settled. The Flower Witch wiped the fresh blood from the corner of her mouth, panting heavily. As a mage, it was fortunate she had learned on-site explosion. Otherwise, it would have been troublesome to be cornered by a warrior in close quarters. The Flower Witch lifted her blood-soaked hand, and once again, blood-red flowers grew on her fair arm. The black-eyed captain got played by her on-site explosion, his sturdy arm covered in blistering scars. Of course, the man in black gloves was almost unscathed. He stood up, as if the outcome of this battle had been preordained, mockingly saying, "So this is the Flower Witch? Quite a far cry from the witches in legends. Do you truly deserve to bear this name?" The Flower Witch knelt, drinking down a vial of dragon's breath potion inflamed with essence blood. "You'll find out." The atmosphere among the three was like 100 tons of gunpowder about to explode. The probing was over. The next clash would determine victory or defeat. They're really going at it. Can this Flower Witch make it? Seems more useless than I imagined. Quite disillusioning, I feel like even I could be a witch. The small crow goofing off in the boat set down a glass tube filled with black whale blood, looking for something to eat. However, as she reached out casually, she touched something soft and springy. The small crow grasped this little thing, held it in her hands, and examined it closely. Wah! Wah! The deep-sea water elves looked pitifully at the small crow, they never imagined their owner would send them to steal. The crow tamer paused for a moment, her face turning faintly red as she pinched. Where did this little thing come from? It's quite cute. So cute. The crow was momentarily smitten by the deep-sea water elves. However, the next second, she sensed something amiss. This group of water elves didn't seem to be wild. She looked back. Amidst the black whiskers, a creature covered in them darted about. This must be the creature that was stirring within the black whiskers just now. What species is this? A black monkey? The worldly small crow was momentarily stunned. Then, the next second, the black-whiskered creature pulled out a beast hunting pistol and aimed it at her. He pulled the trigger. Chapter 91, I'm responsible for the squawking, you're responsible for the killing rampage. Bang bang bang. Bullets drew several horizontal lines in the air. Little Crow casual flick of her head, easily dodging. Such poor marksmanship. Luckily, Little Crow reached out to catch the stray bullets, with blood blossoms splattering in her palm. The bullets failed to penetrate Little Crow's defenses. Didn't break through, hey. Chen Qi could only give a wry smile of helplessness. He had never seen Little Crow exert her full strength while slacking off. Little Crow's profession wasn't a pharmacist, nor a doctor. Instead, she belonged to the more powerful specialty of a cup shadow, drug test subject. The greatest feature of her profession was the significant enhancement of her drug absorption capacity. With the aid of being a drug test subject, she could consume 10 times more potions than an average third-tier transcendent. And their potency surged by several times. Thus, Little Crow's true combat style was to crazily gobble down drugs and then enhance her body. Unlike the Flower Witch, Little Crow specialized in monster potions. The hidden potions she possessed were taboo concoctions capable of twisting both flesh and mind. Simply put, Little Crow was essentially a drug-gobbling, life-risking berserker. But due to the severe side effects of drug consumption and her undercover identity, Little Crow usually acted as a combination of an actor and a slacker. With that kind of salary, she didn't want to push herself too hard. Chen Qi stowed his gun and took advantage of the recent explosion to run a circle around Blackbeard Land, putting himself in a comparatively safe position. Moreover, his plan had worked. 4 deep-sea water elves, like skilled thieves, suddenly pulled the scientific equipment and microscopes into their bodies from the research boat. Among them was also the tube containing black whale blood. Although he didn't know its specific use, it was definitely good stuff, good enough to drive the man with the black glove crazy. Little Crow extended her hand, trying to stop the deep-sea water elves. However, the next second, the water elves plunged into the depths of the sea, never to be seen again. The waters of Blackbeard Land are very deep. Chen Qi then stepped on the water elves, sprinting towards the Flower Witch. A little flower of surprise sprouted above the Flower Witch's head. Despite being wrapped in black tendrils and wearing hunter's clothes, the Flower Witch recognized Chen Qi at first glance. "So you're still alive, hey?" In the face of this sudden development, the man with the black glove also turned his head and roared. "Little Crow, what are you doing? Go after him!" Little Crow, looking at the group walking on water, spread her hands helplessly. Damn, why can everyone walk on water? She couldn't step onto the water's surface, so how could she chase? The Flower Witch abruptly picked up her magic wand, focusing her maximum spiritual power at its tip. Support. Basic attack spell, full power version. Ferocious thunder cleaved through the water, creating a huge wave between the man with the black glove and Chen Qi. Thinking to block me, the man with the black glove murmured, "I really am underestimated." He licked his lips. "Flower Witch, I will show you the greatest insult to your companions right before your eyes." He braved the Flower Witch's spell head-on and then flicked his finger, sending a black giant snake cutting through the sharp spiritual power towards Chen Qi. "You're bracing against me." Chen Qi drew his beast hunting pistol, aiming at the immense black snake. Bang! A blue flame traced a massive line in the air. A bullet drenched in ghost fire oil shot out, striking the black snake in the eye. Immediately afterward, he grabbed a deep-sea water elf and hurled it at the giant snake. Fire in the hole! The water bomb with tremendous force exploded, shattering the head of the black serpent like a watermelon. In their continuous sprint, Chen Qi and the Flower Witch managed to rendezvous. The Flower Witch looked at Chen Qi, who was completely entwined in black tendrils, looking like a monster. She smiled faintly. Still alive, and doing well. Unexpectedly, he had endured Blackbeard's torture and held on for so long. It couldn't have been easy, Blackbeard must have done some terrible things to him. Unfortunately, the present situation didn't allow for idle chat. She raised her magic wand, saying to Chen Qi, "Run, chef, these 3 are very strong. Leave the rest to me." A first-order transcendent like him would only be a burden to her here. "No, you run too. We can't win against them." Chen Qi's gaze was cold as he brushed the dust off his clothes. At the same time, to prevent Black-Eyed Captain and Little Crow from recognizing him, he altered his voice. His voice was full of masculine charm with a nasal twang. The Flower Witch was instantly doused with cold water by her teammate. I also run? And what's with that voice? Bubble sound. Chen Qi loaded bullets into his gun. Rashness would only lead to death. 3 third-tier transcendents. Among them, Little Crow held a trump card, and gloved hand mastered the complete Shadow School. As for the Black-Eyed Captain, though without much merit, he was tough to take down. Even if the Flower Witch were to sacrifice her life to use the taboo spell of release, she wouldn't be able to defeat the three of them. Gloved Hand's body continuously dripped with blood, darkening the sea below him as he said with a smile. Do you two bugs think you can get away? You can do nothing. Once we catch you, we will bestow upon you the greatest insult. Blooms of fresh red blood flowers appeared on the pale skin of the Flower Witch. Angered, Chen Qi spoke coldly. Flower Witch, keep your cool. This man's profession is a third-tier shadow occupation, the malicious slanderer. Shadow is a collective of filth and malevolence. He can absorb the malevolence directed at him and turn it into his own strength, and the attacks from those who harbor malevolence toward him will be significantly weakened. The shadow occupation represents the dark side of the world, that is, the collective of human negative emotions. Occupations with high negative emotions such as prostitutes, robbers, thieves, and victims of bullying are all related to shadow. And the malicious slanderer is a typical masochistic occupation. The more others hate him and hold strong malevolence, the weaker their attacks will be. At the same time, he can absorb this malevolence, merge it with spiritual power, store it, and use it to cast powerful shadow spells. His occupational task is to draw a random lucky person each day and provoke others' malevolence towards himself. This school, also known as the Keyboard Warrior, Mocking, or Shadow School, is a both powerful and disgusting branch within third-tier occupations. The moment Chen Qi finished speaking, the other four fell into a brief silence. Especially the Flower Witch and Gloved Hand, both of whom looked dumbfounded. Really? Even though his voice was greasy, what he said seemed to make sense. The Flower Witch adjusted her breathing, indeed feeling a surge of irritable malevolence. Gloved Hand spat out a mouthful of bloody water. Damn it, how do you know? The malicious slanderer was a rather rare shadow occupation, one that many libraries would not even record. A normal person couldn't possibly know about it. Chen Qi chuckled. Read more books, peruse the newspapers, get plenty of sleep. This guy is no ordinary person. Gloved Hand gritted his teeth. So you're knowledgeable. But even so, you still won't escape from the palm of my hand. Gloved Hand's fingertips began to condense little black snakes again, and he said to the black-eyed captain. Black-eyed captain, you waste, you go first. As only a first-order transcendent at the moment, if Chen Qi wanted to be of help to the Flower Witch, he had to demonstrate his usefulness. In the transcendent world where hierarchy matters, it's rare for a low-order transcendent to command a high-order one. Many high-order transcendents are quite arrogant. At first, they ask for advice humbly, requesting others to point out issues. The next day, who are you, what's your status, to point out my issues? Luckily, the Flower Witch was quite open-minded. Following my earlier remarks, she should be willing to listen to me. Right after, Chen Qi opened his backpack card and continued speaking. Flower Witch, restrain your urge to kill, maintain a peaceful heart and strike him as if you were hitting a stone by the roadside. Malevolence is unending. Unless one is an emotionless battle machine, it's impossible not to generate malevolence when fighting a malicious slanderer. Leveling out your emotions, treating the opponent as a mere rock, although it can't completely nullify Gloved Hand's ability, it's sufficient. The Flower Witch obediently nodded her head. From a young age, her teachers had taught her that in the company of three, there is bound to be something to learn from. She suspected that Chen Qi might very well be a formal member of the intelligence organization known as the Press. She took a deep breath, and the blood from her pale skin fell onto the sea surface with the wind. She raised her head, looking at Gloved Hand as though she were regarding a roadside stone. It might work. Being regarded as a stone? Why not look at me as if I'm dog excrement? Gloved Hand felt insulted but didn't sense the strong malevolence. It was just like the countless practices she went through as a child. She held her magic wand with both hands, and once again, a powerful energy gathered at its tip. Basic attack spell, full force version against a stone. Chapter 92, Give Some Face. The air around began to violently fluctuate, and the mighty spiritual power converged, like a ferocious laser cannon erupting forth. The black-eyed captain swiftly backed away. The black gloves also stopped resisting head-on, moving instead like a wild dog in full sprint. Boom! Blood splattered as the upper half of the black gloves was cut open with a vivid wound. Chen Qi raised his head and sneered. How about that, black gloves, still feeling good? The bloodied black gloves stood up, almost biting through his teeth in anger. In the world of pirates, extraordinary rank symbolized status. Now, he was actually being mocked by a brat of the first order. The feeling of being insulted by a brat was unbearably humiliating. It had been a long time since he felt this way. He spat out a mouthful of bloodied teeth. Not bad, exhilarating, bring it on. A huge amount of sticky, pitch-black shadows emerged again on Black Glove's body, beginning to repair his flesh. A third-tier transcendent is a point of qualitative change. Once one reaches the third rank, with enough transcendent modifications, one can train their body to a state as tough as reinforced iron. The flesh itself can resist a barrage of bullets. And what the Black Gloves trained in was a shadowy body capable of constant regeneration. What should we do? The Flower Witch sweated, holding her magic wand in both hands, her toes skimming over the surface of the water. The weakness of a shadowy body is... Chen Qi quietly pondered. Being among the outstanding third-order transcendents, Black Glove's physical robustness had already exceeded human limits. We can't kill him, but we can disable him temporarily. After disabling them, we just run, Chen Qi plainly stated the plan and asked. Flower Witch, do you have any fire-based moves? Shadows fear the light, particularly wary of fire-based moves. The Flower Witch paused for a second. I can't, I'm an amateur mage, only capable of some basic techniques. What about potions related to fire? None, they all fell into the sea. The Flower Witch clenched her magic wand tight. Watching Black Gloves as his body nearly finished regenerating, Chen Qi raised his head, analyzing the situation at hand. The little crow was shirking, using the excuse of not being able to walk on water, always playing coy. The black-eyed captain was very selfish, unwilling to sacrifice himself to create an opportunity for Black Gloves to strike. Probably, it would only be when it's time to steal the killing blow that the black-eyed captain would make a move. In simple terms, among these three people, one was an undercover actor and another a headhunter unwilling to get hurt. The real key was with Black Gloves. Chen Qi opened his backpack card. Flower Witch, what about control-type moves? The Flower Witch's eyes lit up. I'm very good at those. Especially entwining ones, but when I am casting control-type techniques, I can't output any attacks. If she couldn't deal damage, Chen Qi's small pistol wouldn't be able to inflict effective harm. And if Chen Qi engaged in melee combat, it would be a suicide mission. His bullets just now couldn't even penetrate Little Crow's defenses. Therefore, the Flower Witch had not used her control-type moves until now. The Flower Witch bit her lip, a look of worry on her face. Hey! Black Gloves dug at his ear and berated. Are you two discussing tactics to our faces, thinking we are deaf? Are your heads made of wood? If it comes to it, why not whisper in her ear? The experienced Black Gloves pointed out, feeling utterly belittled. The opponents even dared to discuss tactics before him. Show some respect, will you? Chen Qi raised an eyebrow, he actually thought that Black Gloves made a fair point. And the next second, he suddenly felt a soft, warm breath at his ear. There was also the fragrant scent of jasmine. The Flower Witch leaned towards Chen Qi, her head coming closer, whispering in his ear. Unless, Black Gloves and Black-Eyed Captain show a gap in their defenses, I can't control them. Moreover, your pistol might not be able to inflict effective damage on them. So, how about we run? Chen Qi's hand trembled slightly. In the game forum, with the Flower Witch as the protagonist, she was cheerful and lively, yet her entire being was bound by fate, a rare committed career type. Was the Flower Witch's favorability towards him already so high, or was it because of a special relationship? Chen Qi's heart raced for a moment, as he said in a serious tone. No, his pursuit ability is very strong, we must cripple him before we can run. Next, I will create his vulnerability. Black Gloves' ears perked up. All of the conversation between the two had been overheard by him. Black Gloves silently adjusted his breathing, accumulating power. A first-order transcendent, thinking of creating his vulnerability. Come here, number 3 water elf. Chen Qi palm faced downward. Under his command, a water elf abruptly popped its head out of the water and bounced into his hand. Black Gloves' body trembled. Inside the body of the water elf in Chen Qi's hand, there was an extremely precious item. Black whale blood. Sufficient to refine their black whale blood. The glass tube containing black whale blood, when had this been taken? Black Gloves turned his head to look at the small crow. Small crow spread his hands. Unable to walk on water, what could he do? Attacked by surprise? He had tried his best. I'm just a healing doctor. Small Crow argued thus. It was quite normal for a healer to get ambushed. Black Gloves felt an agonizing pain in his chest from anger. More despairing than a powerful enemy were teammates who slacked off and fished. Chen Qi suddenly threw the glass tube containing black whale blood backwards. Black Gloves, if you don't want this tube of black whale blood to vanish, come and get it. The glass tube fell into the sea and was taken by a deep-sea water elf, moving away from their position. He absolutely couldn't show any vulnerability at this moment. Black Gloves struggled to maintain his composure. But watching the black whale blood getting further and further away, he couldn't help but take a step forward. If he delayed any longer, black whale blood might vanish into the vast ocean. That was tied to his black whale group cadre evaluation for the year. It doesn't matter, I am strong. Black Gloves hesitated no more, as 3 pitch-black little snakes appeared at his fingertips. The 3 snakes swelled up ferociously and transformed into monstrous pythons. 3 snake bite. Let's go, Black-Eyed Captain. Black-Eyed Captain and Black Gloves nearly moved forward at the same time. The blackbeard grass swayed in the wild wind around them. The flower witch's hair, full of blossoms, danced in the wind. She focused her attention and tapped her wooden wand lightly on the water's surface. Earth Goddess, please protect us. A ripple of spiritual power imbued with the essence of nature spread across the water's surface. The floral appearance technique of control, the goddess's vines. A mass of green slimy vines grew from the sea, entwining towards the 2 men. The vines swept over both men's thighs and arms, successfully entwining them. We did it. The flower witch was delighted, but the next second, a dread-filled black bloom emerged above her head. The pythons on Black Gloves violently tore at the vines. The flower witch hurriedly said, I can only hold them for 3 seconds. 3 seconds was already quite impressive. Chen Qi praised. Well done, flower witch. Chen Qi didn't hesitate, taking out an entire barrel of ghost fire oil from his backpack card. Ghost fire oil. The ghost fire of the ghost fire fish was a very special transcendent blue flame, powerful like a meat grinder, capable of burning underwater as well. Chen Qi muscles tensed, finding the right angle to heave a barrel of ghost fire oil, drenching Black Gloves. Black Gloves felt the sticky sensation on his body. Ghost fire oil? Why is there so much? Chen Qi didn't give Black Gloves time to react. In the last second, he aimed his gun at Black Gloves. He pulled the trigger. Bang! This burn, worth 800,000. Chapter 93. Your medicine. The bullet ignited the ghost fire oil, accompanied by a loud explosion. The roaring flames intertwined like countless fiery serpents in the air. The transcendent blue flames kept rising, even forming a sky-high fiery tornado above the ocean. This burning was mixed with the scent of money, infused with his rage. The black glove fell from the vines into the water, convulsing incessantly. It felt as if he was being gnawed by 1,000 ants and 10,000 centipedes. The black-eyed captain was utterly shocked. This amount of ghost fire oil was enough to burn for half a day. Ghost fire oil wasn't cheap, and often it was hard to come by even if you had the money. The black-eyed captain recalled that a weapon shop typically sold only a little ghost fire oil. How many weapon shops would one need to buy out to get this much ghost fire oil? The black glove writhed in the blue fire. He had thought that being on water would spare him from a powerful fire attack. But he never expected the opponent would buy ghost fire oil, and a whole barrel at that. The method of use was actually to smash it directly. Is this guy a ghost fire oil wholesaler? In that instant, he felt not just humiliation but also the onset of death. Pain, pain. I feel like a mouse, a dead mouse that's about to be burned alive. The black glove, wreathed in blue flames, howled in the seawater, his body twisting constantly. For a short time, he couldn't move, let alone pursue them. Sigh. Chen Qi, relieved, patted the flower witch on the shoulder and said, "It's over, flower witch, let's go." The black glove's last resort was a power that touched the source of his nature form. A forbidden technique that required a lot of negative emotions and a heavy price to use. At this moment, the black glove was already preparing this move. Continuing to fight would only result in both the flower witch and the black glove perishing together. Finally, Chen Qi glanced at the disheveled black glove. His pitch-black mask had been ruined by the ghost fire, revealing a sharply defined square face. At the corner of his eye, there was a scar shaped like a mouse. A rather distinctive face. The black glove was a malicious libeler, someone who had angered enough people to fill a plaza. As a result, he kept himself tightly wrapped, fearing his true appearance would be exposed. Selling this information to a newspaper would definitely fetch a good sum. Chen Qi noted this, then turned, stepping on the deep-sea water elf, and headed towards the small boat. The flower witch followed obediently, staff in hand. Under the warm light of the flames, a man and a woman gently traversed the water's surface, disappearing from sight. Half an hour passed. The black glove was still burning. Even after such a long time, their figures lingered in their minds. Especially Chen Qi, the little crow never expected a first-tier transcendent to leave such a deep impression on her. Moreover, he could wear the black whisker suit for so long. The little crow asked. Just leaving like that? Black-eyed Captain, aren't you going to chase them? No chase, it's not necessary. It's a thankless task, we didn't have the ability to pursue the flower witch anyway. The black-eyed Captain placed his cold hand on the burning black glove, warming it by the fire. The little crow propped her chin up and asked curiously. Black-eyed Captain, do you think that flower witch's friend is a newspaper person or a noble from the golden flower bird kingdom? In her memory, only a noble's carefully cultivated offspring could remain so composed at first rank. And he even knew about the black glove's professional abilities. Even they didn't know the black glove's capabilities. They always thought the black glove just had a sharp tongue. In a third-order transcendence battle, a first-order transcendent often couldn't intervene, many times, even looking could be fatal. Unexpectedly, the other side became the flower witch's commander. He is. The black-eyed Captain's body shook abruptly. It was strange, but he thought of that boy parasitized by a sea beast, an excellent crewman who inherited his black knife legacy. Although wrapped entirely in black whiskers, making him unrecognizable. But it was so similar, so very similar. Could it really be him? The black-eyed Captain gripped his knife and shook his head. What is he to the flower witch? Come on, tell me. The little crow pursed her lips. The black-eyed Captain said in a deep voice, you wouldn't believe it even if I told you. You don't know if I won't believe you unless you say it. Even if I did, you wouldn't believe me. My guess is too bold, too shocking. You're crazy. The little crow retorted. But regarding Chen Qi, she had her own assumptions too. He pulled out a newspaper from the research boat. The headline was about the Black Rabbit Gang being wiped out in a mysterious attack. But that didn't seem right. The little crow picked up the newspaper and then placed it down, shaking her head. Recently, too many strange things were happening on the ocean. Suddenly, a raspy voice came from beneath them. Who he is might be important, but can you two help put out the fire first? Half an hour later, the ghost fire on the black glove had diminished somewhat. The black-eyed Captain mockingly looked down. Black glove, you didn't say anything, kept shouting pain, pain, pain. I thought you were trying out some new game. Feels good. After a long silence, the charred black glove said. Not good. Thump, thump, thump. Deep-sea water elves dumped everything they had stolen from the research boat onto the small houseboat. The flower witch and Chen Qi also jumped onto the small houseboat. We survived. The flower witch took a deep breath, smiled, and extended her small pink fist to Chen Qi. Chen Qi extended his fist as well. Bang! A victorious fist bump. That was close, that was really close, I thought I was going to die. The flower witch patted her chest, she never imagined the black glove would be this strong. Moreover, his powerful shadow form far surpassed the normal constitution of a third-order transcendent. The black glove was most likely Whale Father's child from the black whale group and had undergone a special baptism. Chen Qi started the small houseboat and checked their loot. A radio transmitter, a special blood analyzer, and some strange gadgets. These things together could easily fetch $1 million. Robbing and running, quite exciting. But the most important was a precious vial of black whale blood. Chen Qi examined the glass vial in his hand. The black whale blood squirmed continuously, seemingly trying to break the special glass vial, like rushing tides, intermingled with the breath of a great whale, crashing towards him. Chen Qi murmured. A dangerous thing. What lay within was too perilous. The flower witch said seriously. That is black whale blood, blood from an ancient border species. Consuming it grants immense power. But as a price, it pollutes one's spirituality, making normal ascension impossible. Eventually, it would completely warp a human's flesh and spirit, turning them into a mad monster. Is that so? This battle had been quite thrilling. Without the ghost fire oil, he and the flower witch would have sustained far more serious injuries. Chen Qi stored away the black whale blood and then looked at the sky. It was still early morning, the sunlight gently sprinkled, tinting the distant horizon a faint golden hue. Chen Qi felt the soft and warm rays. At this moment, he noticed that ever since boarding the ship, the flower witch had been staring at him. Chen Qi looked at the black whiskers attire he was wearing. The black whiskers were still wriggling. This attire was very uncomfortable at first, but over time, wearing it surprisingly became a bit pleasant. Ahem, I forgot to take it off. Chen Qi plucked the black whisker grass from his body and threw it back into the sea. Fortunately, the black whisker grass wasn't very aggressive under sunlight. Combined with his earlier application of sea beast oil, it didn't arouse the flower witch's suspicion. By the way, are you a member of the newspaper? The flower witch asked curiously. Could Chen Qi really be a member of that legendary newspaper? Chen Qi had previously been with Pei Lu and knew the Black Glove's information. Thus, she suspected Chen Qi was also part of the intelligence organization, the newspaper. No. Chen Qi replied resolutely. Really? The flower witch pouted, casting a doubtful look. She then walked out of the boathouse and spread her arms. The golden sunlight fell on her, like a beautiful flower field just in full bloom. Then, she suddenly remembered something and hurriedly took out a pale potion from her belt pouch. In the sea breeze and sunlight, she smiled radiantly and said, "Almost forgot, your potion." The flower witch proudly lifted her chin. This was a potion she had meticulously concocted. Chapter 94, The Pale Medicine. The flower witch handed Chen Qi 2 vials of potion. One was a white potion made from pale scale fruit, and the other was a potion exuding a green sheen. It didn't look very appetizing. Chen Qi asked. What kind of potion is this? Flu medicine. Chen Qi felt a warmth in his heart. He had almost forgotten about his flu. Really, thank you. Chen Qi drank the flu medicine, then held the white potion up to the light, examining it carefully. The potion had a unique pale hue, different from ordinary white, carrying a faint cold glow, like moonlight reflecting off the water's surface. As sunlight shone through, ripples began to form within the potion, as if endless life was surging inside. An unprecedented prompt flashed before Chen Qi's eyes. Pale scale potion. Nature form, cup, lamp. Description: an extraordinary potion made with pale scale fruit as the core, blended with various herbs. Effect: significantly enhances inspiration, boosts physical constitution. Note: the soul shines from within. Upon consuming this potion, your body will undergo a slight evolution. Chen Qi didn't hesitate and drank the potion in one gulp. In an instant, a faint layer of light appeared before his eyes. Tooth-filled jellyfish floated by the horizon, the sun smirked and then opened its cold, illusory eyes, and numerous red-eyed arms emerged from the sea. This felt like eating poisonous mushrooms. Chen Qi closed his eyes, trying to adapt to this peculiar sensation. The flower witch explained. The pale scale fruit contains the power of the lamp. Using it directly can cause mental disturbance, but don't worry, the neutralizing herbs will take effect soon. Then, the fantastical scenes before his eyes began to change. The jellyfish turned into scantily clad jellyfish girls, the sun became a Teletubby, and countless withered arms made a V sign at him. Is there a difference? What kind of neutralizing herbs did you exactly add? As time passed, the fantastical scenes in his mind gradually dissipated. Chen Qi felt a hot sensation starting from his feet and rising to the top of his head, then opened his eyes again. Your constitution has increased by 7 points, your inspiration has increased by 12 points, and your intrinsic spiritual power has moderately enhanced. Many of his attributes were already nearing the peak of a first-order transcendent, but he still managed to improve so much. It's not easy. Chen Qi once again checked his attribute panel. 30 points in constitution, 50 points in inspiration, 22 points in agility. Though they didn't seem high, these stats were already extraordinary for a novice transcendent. Many second-tier transcendents had only around 20 points of constitution and 30 points of inspiration. 30 points in constitution marked an important milestone. Reaching 30 points in constitution allowed for armor implantation surgery, preliminary mechanical ascension. He could practice legendary combat skills and begin the martial path, using his physical form to touch the heavens. It also allowed for safe genetic enhancement and bloodline evolution. Most importantly, it met the wearing conditions for the residual fire touch. 50 points in inspiration meant he could easily identify insights for D-level and lower cracks and learn many powerful detection skills. And these attributes would get a small percentage increase when he advanced to second tier. With his current state, even if showered with blue-flamed machine gun fire, he could still be lively with Qi power. Feeling the power surging within his body, Chen Qi excitedly said. Flower Witch, can you give me a punch? Qi power and constitution were now critical components of his defense. Confidence. Daylight broke, and he was ready for action. Chen Qi wanted to test his current defense level. How did it compare to the Flower Witch's punch? A third-tier mage's punch was still within his acceptable range. Besides, the Flower Witch's delicate fists, she shouldn't be good at close combat, right? Give you a punch? Really? It was the first time the Flower Witch had received such a bizarre request. Really? Bang! A crisp sonic boom echoed in the air. Scorching smoke wafted from Chen Qi abdomen. The Flower Witch retracted her crimson little fist, apologetically said, I only learned the most basic fist techniques. Was it okay? Although she was mainly a pharmacist, she knew a bit of everything. Basic fist techniques? Are you sure that wasn't a sonic boom punch just now? A man couldn't admit to being weak, but the pain left him unable to speak. Chen Qi felt momentarily muted, then, after a long silence, squeezed out 2 words. Not bad. Chen Qi promptly turned his head, straightened his back, and wiped the corner of his bleeding mouth. He needed more practice. Indeed, without corresponding Qi skills, attributes alone were far from sufficient. Next, Chen Qi walked to the control panel and asked. By the way, Flower Witch, where are you planning to go next? I need to head back to Moonstone City. Having finished attending to the Flower Witch's matters, Chen Qi was ready to return to the city to upgrade his equipment and skills. To Moonstone City as well. The Flower Witch had already thought about her future plans. To advance to the 4th rank legendary realm, I must fully assimilate my pharmacology. Next, I'm planning to collect medicinal herbs and complete the digestion of my transcendent occupation. Then, I'll find a way to pass my mentor's trial. Besides that, I want to search for relics like meat-cutting bone-breaking, sea song, blade of blood, and joyful elf, as well as info on the deep-sea hunter's treasure, to arm myself. Aside from her magic wand, the Flower Witch's other equipment was quite ordinary. Meat-cutting bone-breaking. Chen Qi asked curiously, having heard the term before. The Flower Witch explained, yes, it's a weapon of the deep-sea hunter's nemesis. This monster merged with a sea beast and forged a monstrous weapon, causing countless tragedies. But a century ago, this weapon was lost in a crack. With the arrival of the crack tide, many lost relics will see the light of day again. Relics. Chen Qi glanced at his backpack card. In a way, his equipment, residual fire touch, was also a relic. Then, the Flower Witch frowned. But the most important thing is solving the money issue. I'm planning to sell a vial of Dragon Breath Potion at the pharmacy. The Dragon Breath Potion was highly valuable and useful, something one would never sell under normal circumstances. But the eternally stubborn Flower Witch was now poor and reluctant to take up a job. Chen Qi's eyes lit up. Dragon Breath Potion, how much per vial? Why sell it to the pharmacy when he could buy it directly? With the black clams and ghost fire fish, he now had a steady income. The Flower Witch, calculating her living expenses, travel costs and potion-making materials, muttered. 80,000 shell coins. That was close to cost price, Chen Qi said. Deal. Once again, they made a transaction. Chen Qi took the potion. Dragon Breath Potion. Nature form, cup. Effect, temporarily grants minor dragon might and dragon charm. Both female and male dragons will find you appealing, and you'll experience a surge in spiritual power and a temporary boost in overall attributes. Spiritual power surge. Chen Qi brightened. Whether it was Qi power or shadow power, it relied on the spiritual power in his blood. A surge in spiritual power meant an enhancement in his Qi power. With the spiritual power surge, he could arm his entire body with Qi power. The Flower Witch rubbed her eyelids. Well, chef, I'm going to take a nap. Extended traveling and potion making had left her mentally and physically exhausted. After a brief conversation, the flower witch hugged a deep-sea water elf and fell asleep at the dining table. As she closed her eyes, her lips curled slightly. If it weren't for Chen Qi, she might have used her flower image technique, flowers blossom in blood, against the black gloves. Using it would have resulted in long-term side effects and subjected her to at least a month of bone-crushing pain. Also, this mission severely injured the black gloves. Such severe injuries, even for a third-tier transcendent, were unimaginable. Woohoo! The flower witch's small head sank into the cushiony body of the deep-sea water elf, sleeping soundly. The other deep-sea water elves also closed their eyes. Chen Qi watched this warm scene, smiling slightly. He was also very tired, but as the captain, he had no time to rest. He had to wait until he reached the shore. Chen Qi steered the small cabin boat toward the distant Moonstone City. The small cabin boat carved a white line across the blue sea. Return Voyage. Chapter 95, Transcendent Path, The Choice of Unique Nature Form. In the blink of an eye, a peaceful day had passed. The sky changed from blue to black, then gradually turned from deep black to a warm orange-red, indicating that a new day was about to begin. In the morning, in front of the harbor of Moonstone City, a gentle breeze blew, carrying a faint scent of sea salt. On the harbor, fishing boats were docked neatly, their sails gently fluttering in the breeze, making a rustling sound. The small houseboat slowly sailed into the harbor from the distant blue horizon. Finally arrived. Chen Qi patted the flower witch on the shoulder. "Flower witch, we've arrived, time to wake up." He hadn't expected that the flower witch could sleep on the boat for over 24 hours straight. And she slept very deeply. Poor deep-sea water elf number 1 was pressed under the witch's collarbone and hadn't moved for a whole day, with the flower witch's drool on its body. "We're here." The flower witch opened her drowsy eyes and stretched. "Did I sleep for a whole day?" "Yes, and you slept very deeply." "Did I snore or drool?" "My elegant and mysterious image." The flower witch was startled, a faint blush appeared on her cheeks. As an elegant witch, she had to maintain her image. She immediately got up, put on her cloak, covering her face and the white arms and legs adorned with flowers. Although her sleeping posture was a bit unsightly, ever since arriving at Witch Sea, this was the first time she had slept so comfortably. The flower witch asked softly, "Ahem, I didn't talk in my sleep, did I?" Chen Qi thought for a moment. "You seemed to talk about something related to your teacher and elegance." "Luckily, my elegant and mysterious image should be intact." The flower witch walked towards the door of the cabin. Chen Qi smiled and said, "Goodbye for now, flower witch." The flower witch was going to search for herbs, and with his current first-order strength, he couldn't help much. Besides, Chen Qi also had many of his own matters to attend to. The small houseboat was about to dock, and it was time for them to part ways. The flower witch adjusted her attire and asked softly, "Mr. Chef, how do I find you in the future?" Considering her need for free meals and his journalist status, among other reasons, the persistently stubborn flower witch decided to get a contact method. She had to admit, Chen Qi had helped her a lot. If it wasn't for Chen Qi, she wouldn't have easily gotten the dragon's breath grass or escaped from the trio's grasp. Chen Qi answered, "At this harbor, I'll be operating the dining boat in the evenings. If I'm not here, you can ask the old man at the newsstand in the 3rd Civilian District." "Understood." She straightened her back, her hands like holding a long court dress, and bowed gracefully. "Thank you again. Without your help, I might have had to deal with the troublesome Bloodblade pirate group." The noble bowing etiquette for expressing gratitude was unexpectedly standard. Wait, dealing with the Bloodblade pirate group? Chen Qi suddenly thought of something. He remembered, in the mid-game, the Bloodblade pirate group and the flower witch knew each other. They fought against the Black Whale group together. Undoubtedly, the Bloodblade pirate group didn't know the flower witch now. The Bloodblade pirate group and the flower witch must have met on Flower Island. Chen Qi was startled. He seemed to have disrupted the encounter between the flower witch and the Bloodblade pirate group. Many things in this world were already moving in a completely unknown direction. Chen Qi threw down the anchor, docking the small houseboat. "By the way, flower witch, you'd better change your outfit, or you might be targeted by a certain blonde cutie." Besides the Black Whale group, there were also miracle reporters wanting to find the flower witch. See you. May we both be well when we meet again." The flower witch jumped off the small houseboat, waving goodbye. After the flower witch left, Chen Qi looked at the empty small houseboat and the 7 bouncing deep-sea water elves. A bit quiet. He held a water elf, counting the gains from his backpack card. This voyage yielded considerable gains. Since setting out to sea, his achievements were quite impressive, even including the complete destruction of the steamship of the Black Rabbit gang. However, this largely depended on sea beasts like the nearshore dominator, not his own strength. In the hunting ground, he also relied on teaming up with the beasts of the water. Chen Qi shook his head. If this continued, he would become a kept man by sea beasts. The real key was his own strength. Chen Qi sat at the table, took out paper and pen, and wrote down a simple plan for what was next. Firstly, he needed to take care of the White Tree's land, sweeping all the ghost firefish in the near-sea area of Moonstone City, leaving none behind, capturing them all. At the same time, he planned to place black clams inside, establishing a preliminary sea beast breeding ground. The transcendent path was extremely money-consuming, and the income from ghost firefish and black clams was crucial. Secondly, he would spend money to purchase Qi power type skills, sensing, meditation methods, and a series of skill cards, practicing to enhance his overall combat power. Skill cards were extremely expensive in the black market, requiring a large amount of money. Thirdly, was the matter of promotion. He now had full attributes, and digesting the chef occupation was only a matter of time. It was time to decide on his unique nature form and prepare the occupation card. The first 2 points were not difficult. Chen Qi focused on the third point. Advancing to second-order transcendent meant he had to determine his unique nature form. Chen Qi thought for a moment. Now, he was not in the game, and couldn't choose his path recklessly. Popular entertainment modes among players like Floral Appearance Enchanting Demon Flow, Hammer Phase Giant Flow, and Cup Phase Exotic Beast Flow couldn't be chosen. If he chose casually, his final fate would be becoming ashes in history. Nature form represented the direction of the heart. If the chosen occupation didn't follow his inner choice, in the future, he was likely to step into the path of madness. In this world filled with elements of destruction, Chen Qi had a strong desire for exploration and a thirst for power. Only by becoming stronger could he survive and go further. Only under the light of the lamp could he see the road ahead and view the higher world. Therefore, he had 2 ideas. One was the lamp, the other was the blade. The lamp symbolized hope, light, exploration, and leadership, while the blade represented glory and power, and conquest. Lamp. Chen Qi said subconsciously, looking towards the boundless sea. To his surprise, his inspiration talent was also a lamp talent. Because of that, his inspiration was different from others. Chen Qi heart leaned more towards the lamp. The path of the blade had a very high probability of leading to madness, easily turning him into a lunatic. One of the 6 major sections of the New Sun, the Black Blood Empire, was a section filled with lunatics. To survive in this about-to-be-destroyed world meant he had to keep exploring and discovering the secrets of the world. But whether it was the blade or the lamp, without joining a transcendent organization, obtaining second-order occupation cards from these 2 professions was very difficult. The Shell Country mastered shells and hammers, and their friendly neighbor, the White Tower Federation, mastered books and lamps. Although the White Tower Federation mastered the lamp, its backing Origin Hunter organization, the Lighthouse, had very limited influence in this world. Unlike other Origin Hunter organizations, the Lighthouse didn't have a large number of subordinate organizations. This meant he couldn't join a lamp transcendent organization, work hard within it, and obtain a second-order occupation card that way. He could only rely on the crack tide. But lamp cracks were rarer compared to other cracks. Moreover, not every time you cleared a crack, an occupation card would drop. Targeting a second-order lamp occupation card was harder than he imagined. Due to their scarcity, these occupation cards easily fell into the hands of other transcendents. Losing hair. Chen Qi had hurt a bit. This meant he had to be the first source of information on lamp cracks. Information could come from the newspaper office. Read new adventures at MVL. In addition to that, the Hunter Association could provide information. He needed to find an opportunity to apply for a hunter's certificate. Furthermore, to advance to the second order, he also needed to do a lot of cooking to quickly upgrade his chef skills. Advancing too quickly could lead to malformation. Coincidentally, his restaurant boat's business hours were from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. every day. Chen Qi eyelids drooped, he stopped writing, and put away his chaotic thoughts. He had been busy for a while and needed some sleep. Chen Qi closed the cabin door, lay down on the bed, closed his eyes, and drifted into a dream. When he woke up, it would be evening, and he would head to his home, White Trees Land, to give the ghost firefish a surprise. Chapter 96. Sea Beast Breeding Base. 20 days later, the land of the White Trees. Next to a giant white tree, there stood a small houseboat. And above the sea, an intense chase was unfolding. It was the deep-sea water elves in hot pursuit of ghost firefish. Wakuku. You won't get away. Deep-sea water elf number 1, like a fierce grand demon king, gobbled up 10 ghost firefish into its stomach. Wakuku Wakuku, you are simply too weak. Wakuku Wakuku. With such meager strength, do you even dream of making a place for yourselves in the ocean? Pft, pft. The unoiled ghost firefish wanted to ignite, to set this bastard world ablaze, to burn away all life on this earth. However, just yesterday, they had been plucked clean by the hands of a detestable human, not a drop left. Wakuku Wakuku. Get in. With a snap. Deep-sea water elf number 1 spit out the ghost firefish from its body into the floating net cage. Then, it bounced and swam over to Chen Qi subordinates, poking its head out, seeking praise. Nicely done, number 1. Chen Qi patted the head of deep-sea water elf number 1. He then got off the black ship Sea Dragon and, stepping on the water elves, moved over to the side of the floating net cage. Breeding ghost firefish is harder than I imagined. He repositioned the boys and supports. These days, apart from running a restaurant, practicing basic meditation techniques, he was building a sea beast farm with ghost firefish as the mainstay. The difficulty of sea beast farming was higher than he had anticipated. Yet, thanks to his efforts, the ghost firefish had settled down. With no hunting or work to do, and food provided every day, life was truly delightful. But as soon as the ghost firefish produced new ghost fire oil, they couldn't help but cause mischief. His painstakingly constructed sea cages had already been viciously sabotaged several times. Moreover, the ghost firefish farm required daily cleaning and feeding. Luckily, in his past life, he had been a distinguished guardian beast master. Although the deep-sea water elves had no hands, their soft, slime-like bodies could actually perform many precise operations. Their combat power was not as strong as dragons, but they were the ultimate handiwork pets. The strongest beasties for chores. And he had 7 of them. Finally, with his diligent training and guidance, all 7 deep-sea water elves had learned to feed fish, clean rooms, and also how to collect ghost fire oil, catch fish, chop vegetables, toss in the frying pan, and massage. They could master these tasks and even outperform humans. Especially in massage and room cleaning, the deep-sea water elves had surpassed 80% of the people. The deep-sea water elves took on a great deal of work. If it weren't for the deep-sea water elves, managing the farm alone would have been a disaster. Chen Qi wiped the sweat from his forehead, stood up, and looked around the sea beast farm he had initially set up. He had spent 3,000 shell coins on a 20-meter-long floating net cage. Besides that, he also farmed black clams and moonlight fish. Chen Qi estimated that, given the production rate of black clams and ghost fire oil, in just about 15 days, the sea creatures here would be able to provide him with a harvest worth 1.5 million shell coins. For an individual breeder, this was truly a fortune. And the cost of feed for the ghost fire oil was less than 10,000. The deep-sea water elves didn't require wages, so this income was practically all profit. The only troublesome thing. Chen Qi shook his head and sighed. There's just too much ghost fire oil. As a single breeder, his supply of ghost fire oil was enough to cover the whole of Moonstone City. He changed the ghost fire oil market in Moonstone City with his own strength. The once rare weapon coating ghost fire oil was no longer a scarce commodity in the weapon shops of Moonstone City. The weapon merchants had already realized that there was too much stock of ghost fire oil. Ghost fire oil was continually depreciating in value. Now, in just 20 short days, the price of ghost fire oil had plummeted by a full 1/5. Therefore, Chen Qi had 2 ideas. The first was to become a trader and sell ghost fire oil in other cities. The second was to increase the demand for ghost fire oil, turning it into a best-selling product. Read latest stories on MVL. In fact, ghost fire oil, as a weapon enchantment coating, was not only highly functional but also aesthetically pleasing. Thus, it had the potential to become a popular product. It was just missing some advertising. But to advertise ghost fire oil, unless you are a celebrity like Perla, it was still too difficult. After Chen Qi finished his work for the day, he took out today's White Dove Times. Number crack tide below, the new forbidden marine areas you must know. Number the 3 jades of the empire, unbelievably all gathered in which sea. Number the siren's song, illusions above the great sea. Number the navy's first expedition, determined to reclaim control of the nearby seas. Number. There wasn't any major news, since Perla hadn't caught the flower witch. The circulation of the entire White Dove Times had plummeted lately. Chen Qi glanced over the newspaper's new forbidden marine areas. This notably marked the land of white trees. At first, he thought that after the Black Rabbit incident, there would be specialists coming to investigate the land of white trees. On the contrary, after the Black Rabbit incident made the newspapers, the land of white trees became notorious above the Great Sea and was listed as a danger zone within danger zones. Nobody dared to come and investigate. Now, many boats that fished for moonlight fish at night steered well clear, fearing they would be caught by the nearby sea overlord. These past few days, he hadn't seen a living soul in the seas surrounding the land of white trees. That's fine. Chen Qi gave a meaningful look to the dopey nearby sea overlord. If someone came here and saw these floating cages and the feed boxes he had built, it would certainly cause an uproar. Then, it would be troublesome if adventurers were attracted to the place. Chen Qi's future plan was to transplant many sea beasts to the land of white trees, constructing a small base there. However, sea beasts suitable for transplant and husbandry were hard to come by. He hoped that no one would discover this place. Chen Qi packed his things and went back inside his small boathouse, glancing at the clock. 6 o'clock, the sky had already donned layers of faint darkness. It was about time to set up his stall. The nearby sea overlord sensed something and rushed over. Goodbye, nearby sea overlord, take good care of this place. After using the extraordinary fish bait, Chen Qi fed the gasping nearby sea overlord. Then, he started his small houseboat and set off toward Moonstone City. These days, he had been looking for clues to a second-tier lamp phase occupation card or a lamp phase crack. But the leads he found were either snatched up by others first or just misinformation. Fortunately, he had secured Perla's assistance, thanks to offering a month's worth of free dinners, leveraging her vast information network. After freeloading for 10 days, Perla finally told him that she would give him an answer tonight. He hoped the information Perla provided would be useful. The engine roared and rumbled. Water elves of the deep sea, let's go, it's back to Moonstone City. Chen Qi called out. The water elves swarmed onto the small houseboat. Chapter 97. Make money, make money. Night had fallen, dotted with stars, in a secluded corner of Moonstone City's harbor. At this moment, this usually sparsely populated corner gathered many of Moonstone City's prominent figures. The street-side open-air restaurant was surrounded by soft light and the warm air of fireworks. And inside the small street-side eatery, the stove blazed, the spatula flew, and the scent of food was intoxicating, with the freshness of seafood, the richness of grilled meat, and the crispness of vegetables. Beyond that, the water elves constantly carried dishes, scurrying back and forth among the tables. Water elf, serve the dishes quickly. Being able to have this meal, this month has not been in vain. Water elf, bring me a bottle of the strongest whiskey. Boss, another serving, braised abalone in sauce. Another serving of moonlight fish. The diners sat around the table, enjoying this rare feast. You cooked garlic moonlight fish today and gained 85 spiritual points. Why has it turned out this way? Why? Chen Qi waited for Perla while genuinely wondering. His original idea was just to cook, sell food, while incidentally progressing through his chef occupation. But he never imagined it would become this popular. 3 days after opening, he was already too busy to cope. Therefore, he had no choice but to switch to a reservation system. But even so, with only one chef, he was still extremely busy. Then, Chen Qi began training deep-sea water elves, letting the more intelligent ones like second and third help with cooking. Second was in charge of chopping vegetables, and third was responsible for flipping the pan. Although this reduced the quality of the dishes, it significantly increased the efficiency of serving them. Chen Qi thought that with reduced quality, there would be fewer customers. However, the restaurant became even more popular. Many people came to eat just to flirt with the water elves. Even scalpers started to snatch up reservations at his restaurant. Chen Qi restaurant even made it to the Witch Times, where it was dubbed as the Water Elf Restaurant in the newspaper. Why has it become so popular? Chen Qi rubbed his head and sighed again. The effect of celebrity endorsements was terrifying. And this was without him deliberately raising prices. Aside from costs, in just over 20 days, from only about 4 hours of business each night, he earned a total of over 500,000 shell coins and 1,600 spiritual points. Chen Qi picked up the account book and did the math. Running the restaurant, along with the income from selling ghost firefish and black pearls, added up to about 2.5 million. The mass of useless equipment he acquired from the Black Rabbit ship, due to lack of a formal channel, only sold for 3 million shell coins. Plus the 1.5 million in cash from the Black Rabbit ship. His cash on hand once peaked over 7 million shell coins. However, the expenses on the Transcendent Path were a huge sum. He went to the black market and bought just one nice, high-level deep meditation skill card and one most basic Qi power basic defense skill card, and 3 million shell coins vanished in an instant. Now, Chen Qi only had a savings of 4 million shell coins. For an ordinary person, that was enough to get married and buy a house. But on the Transcendent Path, this money could only stir up a little splash. Fortunately, once the sea beast breeding farm was successfully built, it would be a sustainable income. Chen Qi reviewed the accounts for tonight. From tonight's stall, he could make about 100,000 shell coins. Despite the restaurant's popularity, the unit price of food made from ordinary ingredients was too low. Limited by manpower, after several consecutive days of busyness, both the deep-sea water elves and he had reached their limit. Moreover, the season for moonlight fish had passed. The most expensive moonlight fish sold for only a bit over 10,000 shell coins. To truly make big money with the chef occupation, the best way was still to create legendary transcendent cuisine. Such as honey-roasted dragon meat, bone dragon rib soup, and so on. Chen Qi stood outside the houseboat, shaking his head, still wanting many items from the equipment market that he hadn't purchased. 7 million shell coins were still far from reaching the goal of buying a large ship. Perlu, is this the restaurant you mentioned? It looks pretty shabby, but the water elves here are cute. I wonder if the boss would sell them. It seems not for sale. Tell me what you want to eat, it's on me. At that time, 2 women walked onto the small houseboat. Finally, they arrived. Chen Qi crossed his arms. Perlu, good evening, what would you like to eat? I wonder if Perlu managed to get any information about the lamp phase crack today. Perlu confidently replied. I'll take the fattest moonlight fish. Today, I'm treating my junior, Lilith, to a meal. Junior? Chen Qi looked toward Perlu's side. Standing next to Perlu was a tall, young woman about 170 centimeters, wearing round black framed glasses, with slightly curly black hair, a strong physique, and also dressed in a black vintage ruffled long dress. Lilith, that seems to be the pen name of the Witch Times editor-in-chief. Chen Qi remembered. Recently, Witch Times reported on his water elf restaurant, so the impression was quite strong. Lilith greeted him, looking at the water elf with an infatuated gaze. Hello, Mr. Chef, I'm very fond of your water elves here. After exchanging a few simple pleasantries, Chen Qi served up a plate of spicy grilled moonlight fish. Perlu and Lilith sat down at the table. Chen Qi asked, Perlu, did you really get information about the lamp phase occupation card? Perlu mysteriously said, yes, because this matter involves confidentiality. After you close up and when there are fewer people around, he will come to find you. He? Involves confidentiality? Chen Qi looked puzzled. Perlu, known as the Enigma Killer, had uncommonly refrained from disclosing the name and identity of the other party directly. A second-tier lamp phase occupation card was actually involved in confidentiality. Chen Qi had a bad feeling about this. And then, Perlu secretly winked at Chen Qi. Chen Qi drew in a cool breath. Her meaning was, get her guests thoroughly drunk. Pearl sat at the dining table and said to Lilith. Lilith, don't be shy, help yourself. The moonlight fish, this is the boss's specialty. Lilith took a small bite with a slightly puzzled look on her face. Delicious. Pearl actually didn't trick her. Then, Pearl chuckled with a confident face and picked up 5 bottles of highly concentrated wheat beer. Cheers. To celebrate the new sales record of your newspaper, Lilith. Thanks, Pearl. The reason my newspaper's sales could set a new record is all because of the popularity of the Flower Witch. After all, the name of the Witch Times is meant to commemorate the legendary witches. Of course, I couldn't have done it without your guidance, Pearl. That has little to do with me, let's drink to that. By the way, how high have the sales of your Witch Times been lately? The newspaper's sales determined the success or failure of their competition. Lilith whispered, not much, a newspaper with cute girls and ladies on the cover hasn't sold many copies. A faint smell of gunpowder spread within his small houseboat. Chen Qi smacked his lips. Are these two performing an office drinking session here? In the game forum, they are competitors. As the editor-in-chief of the Witch Times, Lilith was the polar opposite of Pearl. Compared to Pearl, who chased big news, Lilith specialized in sensational and silly news. Moreover, she had exquisite drawing skills, applying unique artistic alterations to characters in the news. Especially to certain special parts. According to some players' investigation, Lilith seems to be the only normal person in the White Dove newspaper. Therefore, in the game forum, her nicknames are Dujin Editor and Ordinary Person. In the White Dove newspaper, every year, the editor with the highest sales is given an unimaginable legendary reward. So, the sales war between the two is now at a fever pitch. Nowadays, since Pearl didn't catch the Flower Witch, the sales of the White Dove Times plummeted. Whereas Lilith reported on the interesting stories of the Golden Flower Bird Kingdom, setting a new sales record. Chen Qi could never have imagined his little restaurant would actually gather two rising stars in the news industry. Lilith gave a slight smile. Pearl, cheers. Cheers. Bring on some strong liquor, Qi. After 3 rounds of drinks, Pearl gave Chen Qi a knowing look. Lilith's drinking capacity actually matched hers. To get Lilith drunk, this amount of alcohol isn't enough. Humph. 2 minutes later, Pearl banged on the table and fell down, unconscious from drunkenness. Weakling. Lilith sneered coldly. Then she raised her head, face flushed, and said to Chen Qi. Boss, are you selling the water elf? Chen Qi had an ominous premonition and asked, what do you want the water elf for? Big plans. Lilith honestly replied, from my observations, many nobles are learning how to play like the Golden Flower Bird Kingdom. They need the water elf for some special play. You should understand the wonder of the water elf, right? They will pay a substantial sum for your water elf. The wonder of the water elf? Play? What are you talking about? Chen Qi frowned instantly like an old man on the subway. What the hell? He had underestimated the perversion of the Witch Sea folks. The water elf is being targeted by rich matrons. As a devoted host, Chen Qi had no interest in letting the deep-sea water elves experience the secretive and luxurious world of the rich. After all, they are so well behaved. No. Chen Qi turned down Lilith's request. Is that so? Too bad. Lilith chugged down another bottle of wheat beer and also passed out. These two are so weak, thought Chen Qi as he tidied up the dining table. It was now late at night, the dock had become extremely quiet, and a cold wind began to blow. Waku waku. Suddenly, a deep-sea water elf, as if encountering some kind of monster, leaped into his arms. Chef, would you mind stepping outside for a chat? A stable elderly male voice. Pearl's guest? Chen Qi turned his head toward the direction of the voice. It was an elderly man with white hair, wearing a crisp blue navy uniform, with white hair neatly tied at the back of his head. A high forehead, a prominent nose, and a face full of wrinkles. Chen Qi's gaze landed on the shoulder patch of the other party. A 5 blue star patch. Chen Qi was momentarily taken aback. The person Pearl brought was a Navy general? Chapter 98, The Navy Admiral's Commission. 5-star epaulets, Navy General. Chen Qi was secretly startled. Although the strength of the Navy in the Witch Sea territory had always been questioned by various parties, a general, as one of the leaders of the Navy, was undoubtedly a top king. Chen Qi sensed the opponent's spiritual power field. An unchanged spiritual power field was like an immovable mountain. Even the surrounding air had become rigid. Merely a trace of breath leaking out made the water elf tremble uncontrollably. 4th rank, a legendary figure. If a huge chasm existed between the 2nd and 3rd ranks, then there was an enormous abyss between the 3rd and 4th ranks. The person Pelua found was actually a Navy general. Chen Qi touched his head, feeling somewhat headache. In the Witch Sea, a Navy general could be considered a regional overlord. If it weren't for the law, their formidable power would allow them to do whatever they wanted. Now, a fourth-tier powerhouse was seeking his help. At that moment, aside from bearing the blame, he couldn't think of anything else he could help a Navy general with. The elderly Navy general said kindly. I am getting on in years. Just call me Old Biou or Mr. Biou. I came here for a meal and incidentally, I have some matters to entrust to you. Biou. Chen Qi recalled for a moment. In the Navy, Biou was considered a general who was nearing retirement, if not for the crack tide. On the gaming forums, although he mostly spent his time in retirement, he was indeed a Navy general with quite a good reputation. If one wanted to join the Navy faction, Old Biou's faction was the most recommended. All right, Mr. Biou, it's cold outside, would you like to come in to chat? Chen Qi tentatively asked. He indeed urgently needed resources for a second-tier lamp phase occupation card. However, if this matter involved the Navy's secrets, it would not be worth the loss. He was not interested in getting involved in the vortex of Navy strife at the moment. Old Biou hesitated for a moment, then entered the small houseboat and poured himself a cup of hot wine. At that moment, besides Old Biou, there were the drunken big mouth Pelu and the witch times Lilith on the small houseboat. Discussing this matter in front of these two potential greats seemed to indicate it was not particularly secretive. As long as it wasn't about dealing with dirty business, Chen Qi heaved a sigh of relief and asked curiously. Mr. Biou, what is the matter? Old Biou drank a cup of hot wine and slowly said. Have a meal of moonlight fish. Meanwhile, I heard from Pelu that you need a second-tier lamp phase occupation card, and your inspiration is quite strong. I suppose so. Chen Qi replied. In the Witch Sea, like him, there were not a few newcomers with strong inspiration. For instance, Tichuan, who from childhood had unusual inspiration and could even feel the flow of spiritual power within her body. Old Biou continued. Then sir, how do you evaluate your strength among the first-order transcendents? Additionally, sir, could you let me see your hunter's license and the record as well? Among the first-tier transcendents. Chen Qi was plunged into thought. Although still a newcomer, he had barely managed to pass the novice period. If not considering the nobles or those with great opportunities among the first-tier transcendents, his strength was among the top. But with his newly acquired residual fire touch, even against nobles who were carefully trained as first-tier transcendents, he could fight. Chen Qi replied. Quite good, but Mr. Biou, I don't have a hunter's license or a hunter record that records combat information. Old Biou suddenly frowned and looked at the dizzy Pelu. Pelu told me that you entered a D-tier crack with a survival rate of less than 20% and came back alive. You are a powerful hunter with both strength and courage. She is also the boldest first-tier hunter I have seen in recent years. I indeed have passed through several cracks, but I have yet to acquire a hunter's license, Chen Qi said. Is that so? Biou's face was filled with sorrow, his information seemed erroneous, the person before him, though high in inspiration, appeared to lack extensive combat experience. Chen Qi straightened his collar. So, Mr. Biou, what exactly brings you here? You need help from a chef like me, but if it's cooking for a banquet, my skills are still not up to standard. Biou sighed deeply. Here is the situation, the crack tide has revived many cracks. And at a location in the Moonstone Islands, an E-grade single-person crack has also revived. This crack is crucial for my family, so I have been imploring the Hunter Association to find someone to clear the crack. Regrettably, due to predecessor's recklessness, this crack has mutated from E-grade to D-grade. But at the same time, it still only allows first-order hunters to enter. After a single E-grade crack mutated into a D-grade crack, but in the short term, the entry conditions of the crack won't change. In the strategy, this is a typical high-difficulty mandatory level, and among the toughest types of cracks to handle. Such a crack is incredibly challenging even for players to clear. Chen Qi curiously asked, how has the crack clearing been going? Biou shook his head, after upgrading to D-grade, the difficulty far exceeds that of ordinary cracks. To date, the Hunter Association has sent out 16 first-order hunters, of whom 11 perished completely, and 5, narrowly escaping, also suffered severe injuries. 5 hunters made it out alive? Hey! The difficulty seems manageable, thought Chen Qi. Biou continued. In this crack, inspiration is crucial, and it involves some elements of the lamp phase puzzle solving that demands powerful inspiration. Therefore, I have been entrusting hunters with high inspiration from the Hunter Association, but unfortunately, many have failed. I originally wanted to ask an equally first-order transcendent like Perlu for help, but she recommended you, and I, in earlier years, indeed acquired a rare second-tier occupation card, which can serve as your compensation. A rare second-tier occupation card. Chen Qi suppressed his temptation, asking instinctively, why not ask the Navy? Logically speaking, an admiral like him handling these matters could easily let his Navy take care of it. Biou took a sip of hot wine. No, the Navy is in a reorganization phase, and the timing is very critical. And as an admiral, I must not utilize naval resources even for trivial matters. Suddenly, Biou seemed to recall something saddening. Moreover, chef, the newer generation within the Navy may not necessarily be stronger than the professional personnel from the Hunter Association. This task was worth considering, Chen Qi thought for a long time. My strength is indeed a bit above an ordinary first-order transcendent, I might give it a try, so, what exactly is the task? Biou looked towards the sea outside the window. Chef, have you heard of the crack lost ones? Crack lost ones? Chen Qi pondered for a moment, a common term in the mid-game. Simply put, these are the living beings who stay in cracks just before they close. Some of them remain sane, becoming part of the crack, growing continuously stronger and even surpassing the crack itself. But this was merely a minority within a minority. Most would turn into ghosts and monstrous creatures. The bigger and more challenging the crack, the higher the chances of encountering these crack lost ones. Many legendary players had been trapped by these beings in C-grade cracks. Yes, I know, answered Chen Qi. Biou stayed silent for a long time, full of regret. 10 years ago, my son went to a crack in the Moonstone Islands. He was a stubborn kid, unwilling to accept family help, wanting to rely on himself to become a legend, just like the legendary deep-sea hunters. But as the crack was about to close, he was trapped under the body of a monster, unable to leave while his companions could only leave food for him. Now, as the tide descends, this crack has opened once more. As he said this, the hands of this mighty transcendent trembled slightly. Even becoming an admiral, an enviable position, they still had far too many things they couldn't accomplish. Biou took out a tidy sum of 100,000 shell coins and crack records from his clothing. Chef, I want you to bring my son back, and conduct a belated funeral for him on this year's anniversary of his passing. This is my commission. Chapter 99, Return to Morrow Island, See Teacher and again. Chen Qi wiped the table. Mr. Biou, you shouldn't mind the condition of the corpse, right? He could bring back the man's dead son. If a crack lost didn't die, it was very likely to become a highly aggressive monster. So, finding the body wasn't difficult, but ensuring the integrity of the body was. Old Biou contemplated in a deep voice for a long time, I don't mind. After death, the soul disperses, and the body is merely flesh, no longer of use. However, my wife believes in sun worship. She cares deeply about this matter. If impossible, could you bring back some belongings, like the chest emblem, the black-rimmed golden glasses, or the weapon he carried, the magic bullet pistol? And such vivid memories. Chen Qi accepted the 100,000 shell coins and the crack file, taking the commission. I understand. I will keep the body as intact as possible. For Chen Qi, who had residual fire touch, the difficulty of this crack wasn't high. Then, he curiously asked. May I ask, what is the nature form of the second-tier lamp phase occupation card I am to receive? Old Biou didn't want to disclose all the information about the second-tier occupation card. Lamp and shadow phase. It's an extremely rare lamp phase card. Don't worry, it won't disappoint you. Lamp and shadow phase. Chen Qi was shocked. The lamp symbolized hope, while the shadow symbolized darkness. These two nature forms typically had a certain degree of mutual repulsion in many contexts. An occupation card that combined these two was extremely rare worldwide. Its value far exceeded that of an ordinary second-tier lamp occupation card, like the Traveler. Chen Qi opened the commission file and schemed through it. The crack was named. Besides him, old Biou had also commissioned 7 first-tier hunters with remarkable achievements. From the records, it was clear that old Biou had put significant effort into this matter. However, most hunters had failed. A little challenging, just the way I like it. Chen Qi put away the file. Unfortunately, it was already late tonight, no time for dinner. Old Biou stood up. Once the commission is complete, besides the occupation card, my wife will also offer a generous reward. In 7 days, I will head to the Crack Sea, so if possible, please complete it within 7 days. No problem. Chen Qi agreed. By the way, for more information on the Crack, you can ask the managers of the Moonstone Islands, the novice mentors. After saying this, Old Biou left the small boat restaurant. Chen Qi prepared to close the door. However, there were still 2 drunk people on his boat. Pei Lu, like a dead pig, mumbled about being the sales champion. Lilith also had a pained expression, muttering incessantly about money. How did these 2 manage to get this drunk? Chen Qi had grown quite familiar with Pei Lu. He no longer held back and grabbed the deep-sea water elf, giving Pei Lu and Lilith a rude awakening. Who attacked me? The groggy Pei Lu felt a bit chilly on his head. Chen Qi briefly explained what had just happened to Pei Lu. Pei Lu and Lilith instantly showed regretful expressions. As journalists, they had missed such a valuable opportunity. It's rare to meet such a notable person even once. According to insider information, a great battle between the Navy and pirates was imminent. To boost newspaper sales, Pei Lu planned to photograph the battle site. Lilith, also for newspaper sales, intended to photograph the beautiful sea demons of the Crack Sea, which required the escort of a strong fleet. Lilith stood up, tied her black hair, and looked resolute. She was determined to win this issue's sales championship of Moonstone City's newspaper. The 2 argued as they left, heads hanging in dejection. After they left, Chen Qi cooked a final dish of stir-fried beef and took a taste. Delicious. His culinary skills, through constant practice, had finally evolved. At that moment, a special prompt appeared before him. Your transcendent cooking skill has been upgraded to Transcendent Cooking LV2, gaining a 10% boost. You can now learn more powerful cooking techniques. Finally. Chen Qi felt exceptionally excited. This prompt meant he had finally advanced as a first-order chef. Chen Qi took out a wooden sign and wrote, "Out for training, temporarily closed." Though it would disappoint many, the restaurant business had to pause. He had more important matters to attend to now. Chen Qi started up the small boat restaurant, heading towards the Moonstone Islands. The Crack was in a small island near the Moonstone Islands. He could conveniently visit Morrow Town on the way. During these 20 days, Chen Qi had sent the ship money to Old Bailey of Morrow Town, paying off the debt, and even adding an extra 100,000 shell coins. However, the Crack was relatively special. The more information he had, the easier it would be to clear the Crack. The file given by Old Biou only contained the basic nature form information of the Crack. For safety, he decided to consult the transcendent managers of the Moonstone Islands, specifically the novice mentor, An. After all, he was originally a transcendent from Morrow Town. By noon, the small boat restaurant had returned to the waters of Morrow Town, the hometown of this world. Chen Qi looked up and observed from the boat. In a short time, Morrow Island had changed dramatically. To guard against sea beasts and pirates, a large number of defensive structures had been set up on the outskirts of Morrow Town. Stone walls, watchtowers, and multiple arrow slits and battlements equipped with well-made bows and cannons. If any pirate or sea beast approached, they would suffer deadly blows. There were even transcendent barrier activation devices. In addition, a towering structure had been erected in the center of the island. The weather station, used to detect the weather over the sea, the cracks in nearby waters, and any powerful spiritual power fluctuations. During the crack tide, this could be considered the most important facility. Quite the project. Chen Qi marveled as he maneuvered the boat for a while before finally docking at the pier. He looked towards the distant tavern on the pier. At that moment, a white-haired girl was holding a thick stack of papers and discussing the next construction plans with 2 transcendents of the Hammer phase. The serene white-haired girl before his eyes was none other than the long-unseen teacher An Ma, an Aotian. Is Morrow Town's strategic position this important? Chen Qi mused silently. It was a familiar feeling. Sensing something, An turned her head, her white hair fluttering in the sea breeze. Her pupil shrank, then she smiled. Qi, long time no see. You haven't changed a bit. When Chen Qi went to sea, she had thought he wouldn't return. Long time no see, teacher An. An put the blueprints into her bag and walked quickly with the craftsman. How is your restaurant business? She looked at Chen Qi's small boat restaurant, which hadn't changed much, and thought his business had flopped. If Chen Qi couldn't make it, if he ran out of money, this would be her chance to recommend a path in book form. Chen Qi smiled and replied, "It's quite popular, and it's been featured in the newspaper." "Hey? Featured in the newspaper?" An looked puzzled. Although she often read the newspaper, she had never noticed this. Also, why would a restaurant be in the newspaper? At this moment, the two craftsmen beside An took out a newspaper and handed it to her. "Really?" An was taken aback. The deep-sea water elf restaurant boat on the newspaper was indeed Chen Qi Small Boat Restaurant. Being featured in the White Dove Times wasn't an easy feat. Even when she had outperformed many talented merchant families to get into Bay Country Royal University, she had only made it to an ordinary small newspaper. Yet, during Chen Qi's short time at sea, he had been featured in the newspaper twice. Once in the very popular White Dove Times of Moonstone City, and once in the Witch Sea newspaper. Though they were in the corners of the paper, it was still remarkable. An stabilized her expression and smiled. "Congratulations! At this rate, you'll soon save enough money for the sea beast medication." Her chance to recommend a path in book form had slipped again. But alas, his business was booming. Moreover, he had acquired many cute water elves. Overall, she was genuinely happy for Chen Qi. Chen Qi looked around. "By the way, Teacher An, how is Maro Town doing?" An frowned. "Recently, there have been more and more cracks near the Moonstone Islands, and more monsters. We plan to set up a barrier around Maro Town. However, due to the impact of these cracks, the construction has been repeatedly destroyed." An pointed to her eyes, which had developed two heavy dark circles. "Once we establish the defensive structures, Maro Town will become the front-line island for hunters. At that point, many wealthy people will come. You might consider setting up a restaurant in Maro Town. It would be very profitable." An could sense that Chen Qi's chef skills had undoubtedly improved. "Is that so?" Chen Qi looked around. This coastal archipelago was indeed prone to monster attacks. Then, Chen Qi straightforwardly asked. "By the way, Teacher An, do you know anything about a crack called the?" An's brain froze for a few seconds, like a robot malfunctioning, as she touched the white tuft of hair on her head. Why was a new chef asking her this question? Weren't they just talking about restaurants and food? Isn't your topic shift a bit too fast? Chapter 100, An's Wish. "This can't be right." An retorted. "Why do you want information about the number 8 train's rift? Are you selling intelligence?" Recently, many people had been inquiring about the number 8 train. But this should have nothing to do with a steadfast chef. Chen Qi did not conceal anything. "I'm not selling intelligence. I've been commissioned to go to the number 8 train and retrieve some items." "A commission? So you really aren't focusing on being a chef?" An smiled in relief. She felt foolish. She should have realized that with Chen Qi's disposition, becoming a mere chef was impossible. Earlier, she had been blinded by the splendor of Chen Qi restaurant. Otherwise, how did he get his hands on a water elf? Chen Qi had never settled down, rather, he chose to become a hunter and had cleared many rifts. He managed to run a restaurant while clearing rifts. That's incredibly skillful. And sensed a considerable enhancement in his spiritual power field. Such unimaginable ascension speed. "I knew I wasn't mistaken." And slowly took out some information from her backpack, explaining like a professional teacher. "The number 8 train is a lamp shadow phase solo rift, located near the southeast sea region of our Moonstone Islands, very close to Maro Town as well. High inspiration and high observation are required to clear it." At this point, An rubbed her weary eyes and sighed. "To set up a special defensive barrier, we need to clear all the surrounding rifts. Despite 20 days of effort, I have cleared all the D-rank rifts. However, the number 8 train rift is very unique, even with information, only a few have managed to clear it. Its emitting information disrupts the establishment of the barrier significantly. Hence, we commissioned the Hunter Association, but they all suffered terrible defeats." And handed over the information, advising. "Chen Qi, no matter who commissioned you, this rift is extraordinarily dangerous. If you can single-handedly resolve this D-rank rift, it will greatly ease our barrier setup work. But be very cautious. At the slightest mishap, leave the rift immediately." And handed the intelligence she had collected to Chen Qi. Chen Qi accepted the rift-clearing information that An gave him. "Understood, I'll be careful." At this moment, two street artisans standing beside An and Chen Qi couldn't hold back. They were discussing solo clearing a D-rank rift, and it's a chef lacking combat skills who was supposed to clear a D-rank rift. That's a D-rank rift with a 75% mortality rate. Recently, An had been tackling various high-difficulty D-rank rifts and was even preparing to take down the nearshore dominator, which was already astonishing. Now, there's someone else aiming to single clear the number 8 train, a first-order powerhouse. Are all the people in Morrow Town this audacious? The artisan asked in shock. Hey, little brother, are you really planning to go to the number 8 train? I heard many people died there, and the distortion rate is still rising. Yes. Chen Qi replied while perusing the information that An handed him. It even included pictures of the number 8 train. This information was sufficient. He accepted it and prepared to head to the rift. Teacher An, I'll go test the depth of this rift first. An smiled and said. Stay safe. If you clear it, stay for a meal. By the way, I have a question, Chen Qi. Have you seen the flower witch in Moonstone City? Why is everyone looking for the witch? Chen Qi swallowed a mouthful of water, curious. I saw her from afar. Teacher An, why do you ask? In an instant, a hint of longing flashed in An's eyes. Since I was little, I've heard legends of witches. The legendary mage, the Ice Witch, fascinated me the most. An took out an Ice Witch statue from her backpack card. It is said that every witch is someone recognized by the Ice Witch. They all possess exceptional skills. Therefore, I've always wanted to see just how strong a witch really is. Sorry, maybe I'm being a bit arrogant. I'm certainly no match for a witch, but even if I lose, it doesn't matter. An smiled wryly. Though she felt she would most likely lose, she truly wanted to fight the legendary witch. Unfortunately, she had been confined to staying on Morrow Island for a long time, unable to go out and capture witches. This invincible yet resolute look in her eyes. Chen Qi thought sarcastically. An was known as an Aotian because she was undefeated among her rank in the Witch Sea. Every few weeks, some noble genius, who looked down on An's impoverished background, would show up to challenge her. But without exception, they were all beaten to a pulp by An. Even with a third-rank body, she could protect herself under a fourth-rank legend. Once, Chen Qi thought the Flower Witch was mysterious and unfathomably powerful. Who was stronger, the Flower Witch or Teacher An? There seemed to be discussion threads on the forum debating their combat strengths. But now, he could sense that while the Flower Witch was already very strong, an Aotian seemed even stronger. Chen Qi visualized for a moment. Without using forbidden techniques, Teacher An, the mage, might be able to beat the protagonist of the Witch Sea, the Flower Witch, from face to behind, with various styles of fighting. More people wanted to capture the Flower Witch than he had imagined. The Flower Witch's situation was truly pitiful. That's the price of fame. He wondered how the Flower Witch was doing in his absence. Hopefully, the Flower Witch wouldn't run into Teacher An. Chen Qi waved goodbye. Teacher An, I'm leaving now. An swallowed down her surging emotions and waved back. Please be very careful, the number 8 train is extremely dangerous. If anything goes wrong, escape immediately. Also, don't forget to come back for the feast. There's a banquet in Morrow Town tonight, and you're an important guest. After saying goodbye, Chen Qi didn't hesitate and took a small boat towards the rift. The small boat sailed towards the ocean. On the sea, as the wind blew, after a while, Chen Qi saw a rusty train carriage. The rusty carriage seemed fixed, parked on the sea. At the door of the carriage, fresh blood spelled out "Welcome passengers aboard. You have contacted the rift, Inspiration Assessment in progress. Inspiration Assessment in progress. Inspiration Assessment successful. Rift name, number 8 train. Rank, D. Nature form, lamp, shadow. Description, during the era of darkness, to avoid catastrophe, people created a tool called a train that could travel anywhere. This became the most common transportation of the era. The people in the train were very lucky, but as time passed, they began to seek things beyond survival, like slaves, love, and even eternity. They traded a tool with monsters, hoping it would keep them young forever. Thus, the monsters took their train through a shadow phase world's gutter. The monsters told them, in the divine kingdom, humans do not die, and souls do not perish. But when they realized it, they could no longer leave the train. They continuously pounded on the windows, continuously pounded on the windows. Unfortunately, like their ceaseless wails, the train could never stop. Clear condition, reach the first carriage and pull the train's brake. Rift distortion rate, 51%, extremely high distortion rate, with a high probability of increased distortion. This rift is extremely dangerous, proceed with caution. Rift rank restriction, only transcendents of the first order and below can enter this rift. Rift participant restriction, 1 person. Due to rift distortion, this rift has become a solo rift. Inspiration insight, you noticed that the space is distorted, only normal humans and objects are the correct path forward. Special inspiration insight, in the darkness, you saw twisted shadows silently dragging people into the dark. Note, you said we've been walking on thin ice, can we reach the driver's cabin? Chen Qi quickly scanned the rift in front of him. The number 8 train was a one-way solo rift. Participants would enter a train and would repeatedly pass through identical carriages. The puzzle was quite simple, that was the information in the inspiration insight, one must follow the normal humans and objects to proceed. Simply put, if you enter a carriage and the scene looks normal, you proceed to the next carriage. On the other hand, if the carriage shows anomalies or monsters that defy normal logic, you should move back immediately. This was the lamp phase clearing method for this rift. During the initial exploration, this lamp phase puzzle puzzled many people. Fortunately, Chen Qi had gathered enough information before entering. 51% distortion rate. Chen Qi looked at the rift's description. The numerous failures of hunters led to the rift's distortion rate being at an extremely terrifying level. Chen Qi took out his prepared pre-cooked moonlight fish. You consumed moonlight fish, inspiration slightly enhanced. Previously, his meditation practice increased his inspiration by 5 points. Including the moonlight fish, his inspiration reached as high as 60 points. Phew! Chen Qi exhaled deeply. Though he was prepared, without a doubt, this rift was the most challenging he'd faced so far. He gripped the black knife and stepped into the blood-stained train carriage entrance. The surrounding light quickly dimmed. You have entered the rift. Read new adventures at MVL. Welcome, passenger, a voice greeted.